The older I get, the more I find myself thinking about death. I often wonder what my final thought will be right before I die, and whether or not I'll be aware that it is my final thought. Final Fantasy VII has never shied away from death, with one of its central themes being how individuals cope with death. Crisis Core also deals with death, but in a more overt way. For those who have played Final Fantasy VII, you know that this game will end in tragedy. Crisis Core is a story about how and why a hero dies. Now you may think that it would be a very down and dreary experience, but this is not the case at all. Despite the heavy focus on death, Crisis Core manages to balance its somber themes with moments of hope, friendship, and personal growth. The game beautifully portrays the protagonist's journey and the impact he leaves on those around him, making it a poignant and uplifting experience, even though I always cry at the end. Crisis Core was originally released on the PlayStation Portable back in 2008 and was the version I played as a kid, and I played the shit out of it. It was probably my most played game on the PSP. However, for this video, I will be playing the re-release Crisis Core Reunion on the PlayStation 5. Aside from the obvious graphical upgrade that the game received, there are a few other changes. Now, I'm not going to be going over all of the changes, but I will talk about some of the more prominent ones as they come up. Crisis Core is actually the prequel to the original Final Fantasy VII, and is part of the Compilation of Final Fantasy VII. The Compilation is a multimedia project by Square Enix that expands on the narrative of the original FF7 game, and with its various entries releasing at different times between 2004 and 2009. The entire compilation of Final Fantasy VII has its ups and downs, but Crisis Core unquestionably stood out as one of its most impressive entries. The very first shot in this game is of a sign for the Shinra Electric Power Company, which is very fitting as it will have a huge focus for the majority of Crisis Core. Unlike in the original FF7, we will be playing from the perspective of a character that is part of the company rather than an outsider. A helicopter is in pursuit of a speeding train. Second-class soldier Zack leans out from the side of the helicopter and leaps down onto the train. This is our main protagonist Zack, and who we will be controlling throughout the entirety of the game. Unlike in many other Final Fantasy games, you will only be in control of one character. Another member of Soldier also leaps down onto the train. This time it is first-class soldier Angeal, Zack's mentor, and Jill tells Zack that there are no Shinra troops on this train, alluding to the fact that it has been hijacked by the warring nation of Wutai. Zack gets to show off his fighting skills by taking out everyone on the train. Like I just mentioned, Zack is a member of Soldier. Soldier is an elite group of fighters employed by Shinra. They have superhuman strength thanks to the experiments performed on them. There are 3 classes of Soldier: first, second, and third. Recruits begin as third class, and the best will be promoted to second, but only a very select few will ever become a first class soldier. The train pulls up to the platform and Zack leaps off in a scene very reminiscent of the original Final Fantasy VII. And in case you are wondering, there is going to be a lot of that in this game, but not to an obnoxious degree. Zack takes a look around the platform before his phone begins to ring. It's Angeal, and warns that the troops approaching are not Shinra troops, but Wutai operatives in disguise. They begin to open fire on Zack, but he continues to casually talk on the phone, as the bullets in this universe are about as effective as finding love on Tinder. Zack hangs up the phone and draws his sword, leading us into the very first fight of the game. Crisis Core is an action RPG, and not some half-baked action RPG like a lot of games claim to be nowadays, but an actual action RPG. You will not get very far if you do not learn the action elements of the gameplay, and it's going to be a struggle if you don't embrace the RPG elements too. Well, maybe not so much with this version, as I did notice while playing that Reunion is quite a bit easier than the original release, and I'm not just saying that because I sucked at this game as a kid. This is a common sentiment among players. There are two gameplay states that Zack can be in, field mode and combat mode. When you enter a fight, the controls will switch to combat mode, and the game will let you know by playing this very subtle sound cue.
Activating combat mode.
And it will play this sound cue every single time you begin a fight. Every time.
Activating combat mode. Activating combat mode. Activating combat mode. Activating combat mode.
When you enter combat mode, you can freely move around the combat arena and use basic attack, guard and dodge. These controls, though simple, can take a little bit to get used to. Part of the reason for this is because Crisis Core makes good use of input buffering, by which I mean that when Zack is performing an action, you can input the next action and it will play out as soon as the game allows it to. This is helpful because when you see an enemy ready an attack, it gives you more time to react. However, it means that button mashing is much less effective. If you need to guard and you just press attack, Zack will need to complete the action before you can perform guard, because you cannot interrupt actions.
Conflict resolved.
Oh yeah!
After the battle, Zack is on the phone with Angel again, feeling good about his performance in the fight, and is confident that he will make first class soldier in no time. Zack runs to the next platform towards Sector 8. There are people running in the opposite direction, and it is then revealed that there is a massive behemoth standing in the courtyard. You may have noticed the slot machine type thing spinning in the corner of the screen. This is the Digital Mind Wave, or DMW for short. Just a heads up, if I say DMV, I mean DMW. I keep saying DMV by accident, I'm sorry. This is one of the weirdest but also one of the best mechanics in Crisis Core. The DMW will be constantly spinning whenever you are in combat. It will randomly stop on 3 character portraits and 3 numbers. Depending on what it lands on will determine what Zack will receive, whether that being a status buff, a limit break, or level up. Yes, the leveling in this game is completely random. Well, not really, it just likes to make you think that it is. When describing the DMW system, it sounds kind of awful on paper. It's a slot machine that you have no control over that determines Zack's stats and when he has access to powerful attacks. But unlike a slot machine in a casino, this slot machine actually wants you to win. There are many different combinations of numbers and portraits that will reward you with at least something. And I have to point out that the DMW is a lot better implemented in the remake, as it no longer interrupts the action constantly. As in the PSP version, the DMW would have the tendency of going full screen during fights a lot. It still does it, but way less frequently. When the right and left portraits land on the same portrait, the DMW enters limit verge mode. If you get 3 matching pictures, then you will be able to perform a limit break. Each character portrait corresponds with a certain limit break. At the start of the game, you don't have access to many limit breaks, but a lot more will unlock as you play through the story, as well as a few more by doing some optional missions. When you roll a limit break, you don't have to use it right away, as it will be moved to your stock, but they will all vanish at the end of the battle, so you don't want to be too conservative with them. Actually, the game is quite generous with dealing out limit breaks, that you will probably end up using multiple during longer fights. They aren't like in a lot of the other Final Fantasy games, where you have to build up a character's limit gauge for a while. Each limit break does have its own animation, and some of them can be quite lengthy, but thankfully, they can be skipped. After defeating the behemoth, Zack is caught off guard as a sword is placed to the backside of his neck. He raises his arms up in surrender. As he turns around, Zack, and probably the player, are surprised to find that it is Sephiroth. For those that were complaining that the mystique of Sephiroth was ruined in the remake, well, little do they know that the mystique had already been long gone within the Final Fantasy compilation. But I would say that Sephiroth is actually quite well utilised in Crisis Core, as he isn't just here for a bit of fan service, he is important to the narrative. Just before Sephiroth is about to deal the final blow, his sword is blocked by Angel, and Zack breathes a sigh of relief. Angel opens up a very 2000s era phone and aborts the virtual reality mission. Man, I never thought I'd be so nostalgic over the old flip phones. Anyway, it turns out that this whole mission was just a part of a training program, and Jill decides that the training is over. Zack is disappointed as he claims that he was just getting warmed up, but then he is shown that his sword is broken.
Zack.
Embrace your dreams.
Huh?
If you want to be a hero, you need to have dreams and honor.
Zack is doing some of the weirdest looking squats I have ever seen. Kunsel, a fellow second class soldier, noticed that Zack has been a little on edge lately. This is because he has grown a bit restless as he hasn't been set on any assignments and is worried that he has been overlooked. Kunsel is surprised that Zack hasn't already heard of the mass desertion that has just happened within Soldier. One of the first class soldiers has deserted Shinra and took a bunch of second and third class soldiers with him. This is why Zack's training has been put on hold. Right after finding out this information, the two of them are approached by Angel, who tells Zack to report to the director to be briefed on his next mission. Zack walks into the briefing room and is met by the director of Soldier, Lazard Deusirius. I'm sorry, that's the best I could do.
Hey,
He informs Zack of the disappearance of the first class soldier Genesis during a mission in Wutai about a month ago. He has decided to send Zack to finish the assignment as he thinks that it is about time that the war with Wutai finally ended. Angel has recommended Zack for first class, and this assignment will be his opportunity to show what he is made of. The operation will begin immediately upon arriving in Wutai, so the game gives the player the opportunity to learn a bit more about the game's mechanics before heading out. Talking to Council in the briefing room, he will send you a combat tutorial via the mail system. Throughout the game, Zack will be sent emails to his phone from various characters, as well as from the Shinra company. Now, you do not need to read these messages, but you will be missing out on a lot of context and interesting backstory to a lot of the events that happen within the main story. It is also within the mail system that you can access all of the tutorials if you need to look up something. When out in the field, an alert will show up on screen whenever Zack receives a message, and once read, they will be saved to the relevant folders, making everything easy to find. It also gives a bit of an insight about how Zack feels towards certain individuals, depending on which folder he places their messages in. It is also at this moment where you will gain access to missions. Aside from the main story campaign to play through, Crisis Core also has a ton of missions, 300 to be exact. Missions can be accessed from the main menu, but you must be at a save point to be able to register to go on one. By completing missions, you'll be rewarded with items, materia, accessories, and also special key items that will give you special perks, such as access to more shops and increasing the amount of accessories that can equip. You even get rewards when reaching a certain percentage of overall missions completed. Basically, if you want some of the best stuff, you're gonna want to be completing missions. Missions don't take all that long to complete, most only taking a few minutes at most. This structure makes sense when you consider that Crisis Core was originally made for the PlayStation Portable. They are very much designed around the concept of being able to pick up and play for a few minutes while commuting on a bus or a train or taking a shit, etc. Not all missions are unlocked at the start of the game. In fact, there is bugger all to do at the start. But that's okay, many will become available by simply playing through the main story, but not all of the missions will be like this, as there are a few that you will need to go out of your way to unlock by talking to certain NPCs. Some are even missable, so if you're aiming at 100% mission completion, you want to make sure that you talk to every NPC as you come across them. All missions will come in sets, and you will need to complete certain missions before the next one will unlock, and they will usually progressively get more difficult, but not always. The missions do have a star system that indicates the difficulty of each mission, but this will only give you a rough estimate of how hard a mission will be, as depending on Zack's build and your playstyle, some higher star missions may not necessarily be that much harder than others. So if you end up spotting a mission with a high star rating and you really do want the reward for it, you may be able to complete it. And besides, in Crisis Core, there is no penalty for failing a mission. You can quit a mission by leaving the mission area or by selecting abort mission from the main menu. You'll be returned to the save points, and any items that you used during the failed attempt will be returned to you. Crisis Core is not a punishing game, it wants you to get what you want. Aside from a happy ending, like in the main campaign, you can move around the map and engage in fights. In every mission, there will be a boss that is indicated on the map by the blue exclamation mark symbol, the same one that is used for main story missions. In a few missions there will be more than one boss, but in an overwhelming majority of them there will only be one. Despite there being hundreds of missions, there aren't that many different maps. Yes, there are different looking environments, but each map and corresponding environment will be used over and over again. Certain areas will be cut off during some missions and opened in others to provide at least some variance in traversing these maps. Honestly, I don't really blame the developers for doing it this way, as it would be unreasonable for them to make unique maps for each mission, and kind of a waste of resources, as even though missions do have chests for players to find, they are focused on fighting, not exploring. This repetition can be a bit draining when doing long play sessions. I know that I keep bringing this up, but this was originally a handheld game, and it is catering more to how a handheld game is played. You are able to take on missions at any time, so it's a good option to try and complete a few if you feel like you're a bit underleveled. Zack has a bunch of stats that will affect how fights will unfold. Depending on your playstyle, some stats will be far more important than others. There is the most obvious one being Zack's HP. If it reaches 0, it is game over. Zack's MP indicates the amount of magic materia he is able to use, and his AP is the amount of command materia he can use. These are the stats that will be on display during every battle, and can be recharged using items and by bonuses from the DMW. Zack's attack stat determines the amount of physical damage he can deal. This not only indicates Zack's basic sword swings, but also the abilities that come from using command materia. Vitality is Zack's defense stat. The higher the stat, the less damage he will take from physical attacks, and has no effect on how much damage magic will cause. The spirit stat is actually the one you want to increase if you want to be able to defend better against magic based attacks. Zack's magic stat is the offensive counterpart to spirit. The higher the stat, the more magic damage you will deal. It's important to note that the magic stat has nothing to do with the amount of MP Zack can have. It only affects the damage output of each spell. The final stat is the luck stat. And for the longest time, I thought this stat had a completely different effect than it actually has, because I am dumb. Based on pure assumptions and hearsay, I thought a higher luck stat meant a higher chance at getting better rolls on the DMW. This is completely wrong, and the game makes absolutely no indication that this is the case. Again, I am dumb. What the luck stat actually does is increase your chance of landing critical hits and getting an item drop, which makes way more sense and is way more balanced. Zack's stats will increase a certain amount with each level gained, but this isn't the only way to increase these stats, and is honestly probably one of the worst ways to do it. Equipping Zack with equipment and materia is a much better way to get the build that you want. You have so much more control over each individual stat, and can then match them to fit into your particular playstyle. The supply pods are another thing you might want to check out before heading out to Wutai. In these supply pods are items you can use in battle. The company sends them to you periodically, and they won't tell you when they have been restocked, so you need to remember to check it regularly. I love how even in the game, the soldiers complain that they aren't told when they are restocked. And there is a conspiracy theory going around that the reason that Shinra doesn't tell them is because they are trying to cut costs. It's such a small little detail, but it does help to flesh out the world all that little bit more. The game is filled with stuff like this.
I'll be joining you as well. I'm counting on you.
Sir!
By the way, what is your dream? To become first? Is it?
No. To become a hero.
Ah, good. Unattainable dreams are the best kind.
Thanks?
Zack and Angel head towards Fort Tamblin in Wutai when they are attacked by some Wutai resistance. Zack, eager to prove himself to the director, steps up to take them out by himself. Angel insists that he calm down, but Zack is determined to make a good impression.
Heard of dumb apples?
No? What's that?
Incredible. You really don't know. Well, so much for you making first.
Whoa, wait! What's this dumb apple?
While in combat, you do have the option to flee. All you have to do is run to the edge of the battlefield for a short amount of time without being interrupted, and Zack will leave the fight. You can do this in any fight, aside from boss fights of course. Zack catches up with Angeal and asks him what the deal is with these dumb apples. When Angeal was a kid, he lived in Benora, the only place where these apples grow. The official name is Benora White. The trees bear fruit at random times during the year. Because of that, the townspeople affectionately call them dumb apples. Angeal's family was poor, and the local funds had plenty of them to spare. The largest Benora White tree grew on a wealthy man's estate. It was rumoured that these apples tasted the best, but even though Angeal had to resort to stealing, he still had his honour, as he never stole from the wealthy man's orchard because that man's son was his friend.
If he was a friend, you should have just asked for some.
Honor can be quite a burden at times.
And what exactly does this have to do with me?
No story is not worth hearing.
What? That's it? Yeah, well, thanks a lot.
Zack continues to follow the path towards the large fort when he receives an email from Director Lazard.
Soldier members, I thank you for your daily hard work. As you all well know, a great number of our comrades have left the company. There is now some concern within the company whether this will lead to a decline in soldiers' combat abilities. However, we can also take this pressure as a chance to prove how indispensable we are to the company by proving our strength as a small but elite group. I hope you take advantage of this mission, where we will be bringing an end to the war with Wutai, to do your best and prove yourselves.
By continuing to the end of the path, we end up near the entrance to the Tamblin fort.
B unit will set off an explosion. That's our cue.
The diversion will allow us to infiltrate.
Right. I'll set the bomb inside the fortress. You'll charge the front gate and...
Uh-huh. And?
Indulge yourself.
You got it. That's what I do best. Come on, B unit. You know, I've never actually seen you use that. Don't you think it's sort of a waste?
Use brings about wear, tear, and rust. And that's a real waste.
You're serious, aren't you?
Yeah. I can be pretty cheap.
Yeah, no kidding.
Begin mission.
Running to the entrance of the fort, there is an army of Wutai troops waiting outside the gate. When in combat, you will more often than not be facing off against multiple opponents at once. The game will automatically choose a target at the beginning of a fight, as well as whenever an enemy is defeated. However, you can also manually lock on selected targets and switch targets freely. This is one of the mechanics that is just straight up an improvement on the original. Now, I love the PSP, but the lack of a second analog stick really made the controls suffer. And the original Crisis Core is a prime example of this. There just weren't enough buttons to make the game's targeting system work, and I think this is one of the reasons why the remake feels a lot easier than the PSP version. There are other factors, but this is definitely one of the major ones. Who would have guessed having better controls makes the game easier? After all the Wutai troops are taken out, we are able to enter through the gates. When assaulting Fort Tamblin, you want to make sure that you take out as many Wutai troops before continuing to the centre of the fortress. The more you take out, the better impression you will make on Director Lazard, but in reality, all it really does is determine what rewards you will get at the end of the mission. This is not a branching path kind of story. There is only one outcome, a very unfortunate outcome that is unavoidable. So if you don't care about getting the best stuff, you can just rush through the fort and just do the mandatory fights. If you do decide to get rid of all the troops, you will need to make a couple of passes through this area, as you will not be able to find them all just by running through once. Luckily, there is a map that makes finding objectives pretty simple. The blue exclamation marks indicates where you need to go for the main story quest, and the orange ones are for the optional side quests. When exploring levels, there is also a compass at the top of the field screen that points towards the current destination. A marker will be displayed when there is someone you can talk to or something you can examine, like chests for example. The marker will usually be blue, but if it is related to a submission, it will be orange instead. Despite this part of the story taking place during a war, it is oddly light-hearted. Crisis Core can be a bit goofy at times, but overall I think it does a good job at balancing its different tones, at least a lot better than the other entries in the Final Fantasy VII compilation, as they had the tendency to be pretty drab at points. During the events of Final Fantasy VII, the nation of Wutai had already been occupied by Shinra, and had been mostly converted to a resort town, with some small pockets of resistance fighters scattered around its regions. At this point in the timeline, Shinra is still seeking control of the Wutai area, as it is an ideal place for a Mako reactor. Fort Tamblin serves as Wutai's last defense against Shinra's forces. Yeah, it feels really weird to be playing on this side of the war, but the game does a really good job at conveying that Zack truly believes that he is doing the right thing, even though it is for slightly selfish reasons. As Zack travels through the fort, he has sent a message from corporate.
Situation with Wutai. We have received reports from the security and soldier departments on the state of war with Wutai. We have been in negotiations with Wutai for years in order to peacefully resolve the long dispute regarding Mako extraction in the region. However, Wutai's steadfast refusal has resulted in aggravated tensions. In order to break through this impasse, we have decided to resume military action. A special attack force of the smallest size has been mobilized to keep the scale of operations to a minimum.
As Zack approaches the stairs leading to the inner sanctum, he stops when he hears a voice. A young girl is at the top of the stairs. This is a cameo from the character Yuffie, who was an optional party member in Final Fantasy VII. She is a local of Wutai and wishes to defend her home. Even though this is a pretty sad situation when you really think about it, this interaction is played off for laughs and is just to start off a small set of missions that you can tackle later on. Zack enters the building and finds it to be empty. Suddenly, the roof begins to crumble, and then two giants drop down from a trapdoor in the roof. This is our first proper boss fight. At points during combat, some enemies will use special abilities. When these abilities are activated, the enemy will enter a casting phase, and an ability gauge will show up. You can lower the gauge by attacking the enemy, which will decrease the ability's impact. Using attacks that the enemy is weak to will help to lower it even faster. If you're able to reduce the gauge to 0 before they are able to launch the ability, it will cancel it entirely. So if you see the gauge above an enemy, concentrate on attacking them first, or you'll regret it. At the end of the battle, Zack receives a phone call from Angeal, congratulating him on a job well done, and also letting him know that he only has 5 minutes until the place is blown up. Yeah, Shinra has a habit of getting rid of evidence of their involvement this way. Just blow it up. Not shady at all. Zack goes to exit the room when a third monster drops down from the roof. Zack manages to dodge the falling monster and draw his sword. He leaps into the air to deliver a powerful strike. Just as Zack is about to finish it off, he is caught off guard and knocked back into a pillar.
Not good.
That's one more you owe me. You lost your focus.
Yeah. Oh, sorry if your sword got any wear, tear, or rust on it.
You're a little more important than my sword. But just a little.
Thanks.
Zack and Angeal are leaving the area via a forest trail when an exhausted Director Lazard catches up to them. Angeal expresses to him that he didn't need to come in person, but Lazard thought it was important for him to be present for the operation that was finally going to see the war come to an end. Depending on how many enemies you took out in Fort Tamblin, Lazard will give you different rewards, but like I said before, even if you do the bare minimum, this does not affect Zack's chances at becoming a first-class soldier. After Lazard finishes his short evaluation of Zack's performance, Angeal insists that they hurry as Sephiroth is waiting for them.
Sephiroth? The hero? Wow, I'm gonna meet a hero!
Zack is about to follow after them, but he is jumped by 3 sword-wielding acrobat soldiers, I guess would be the best way to describe them. Zack defeats the enemies and then catches up with the rest of the group. Angeal has already taken out a few of the enemies, but there are more on the way. Angeal instructs Zack to escort the director to safety. They meet up with a couple of infantrymen who escort Lazard the rest of the way while Zack returns to help Angeal. On the way back, he sees 2 dead enemies on the ground, just like the ones before, and now that he has more time to get a better look at them, Zack realizes that they aren't Wutai troops. Then a red materia falls in front of him, transporting him to a hellscape where he must fight off the summon Ifrit. These fights work pretty much the same as any other boss fight, except once the summon is defeated, a new mission will become available. If you are able to win against the summon again, then you will obtain that particular summon's materia, and their image will be added to the DMW. After acquiring summon materia, the DMW will sometimes enter summon mode. All of the real images will change into summon images, and if they match, a corresponding limit break move will become available to use. And the attack animations that go along with these are some of the most epic looking scenes in the series. They are freaking amazing, but also quite long. Luckily, like all other cutscenes in the game, they can be skipped, which is awesome because even them being as cool as they are, they do get old after watching them for the 50th time. Ifrit falls down in defeat, and Zack sheathes his blade. However, once he turns away, Ifrit gets back up and throws a fireball towards Zack, but just before it's about to hit him, it is intercepted by Sephiroth.
Bam! Pow!
Since he was defeated, Ifrit returns to his materia, and the 2 soldiers are back on the forest trail. Sephiroth walks over to one of the dead troops and removes his helmet.
Genesis.
The missing soldier first class? They're identical.
A Genesis copy.
Copy? A human copy?
Where's Angeal?
I thought he was fighting around here.
So he's gone too.
What? Wait, what does that mean?
It means Angeal has betrayed us as well.
No way! I know what kind of guy Angeal is, and he'd never do that! Angeal wouldn't betray us. Never!
Zack is once again doing some really weird looking squats, all the while contemplating the recent events. Zack does not believe that Angeal is working with Genesis, as he would never condone the use of human copies to attack his friends. His soldier honor means too much to him. Zack gets called to the briefing room to meet with Director Lazard. As soon as Zack arrives, he asks if there has been any word on Angeal. Lazard shakes his head as he reveals that Angeal hasn't even made contact with his family. Lazard then briefs Zack on his new assignment. He will be dispatched to the hometown of the missing first-class soldier Genesis. According to the parents, they have had no contact with Genesis whatsoever, but they can't be trusted. Lazard has already sent some of his people into the town, but he has lost contact with them. Zack will need to investigate the area, but he won't be going alone, as he will be accompanied by the Turk Sung.
Sung of the Turks.
This job is looking really gloomy.
Zack gets a phone call from Council, and you get the option to either start the main mission straight away or go out and explore some of Midgar. Midgar is this planet's largest city and is the home to the Shinra Electric Power Company, who essentially runs most of the world. The city is laid out in a circular formation, with it being separated into 8 different sectors, or how Barrett describes it, a fucking pizza. Underneath the plates are the slums, where the less fortunate reside. Even though the city is huge, you are only able to explore a small section of it. When exiting the Shinra building, you will be in Sector 8, where there is Loveless Avenue with a huge theatre, and will be a familiar sight for those who have played the original Final Fantasy VII or the remake. Sector 8 is right next to the Sector 1 train station that can take you to the Sector 5 slums a little bit later on in the game. When walking around town, there is a bunch of NPCs to talk to. Some will activate side quests as well as additional missions, but a lot of them are just there to add flavour text, as well as to expand a bit on the lore. There isn't too much to do, but it is worth having a look around at least once. The layout of Midgar is the most telltale sign of this game's origins of being a handheld title. It is segmented by loading screens, and it does make the city feel a bit condensed. This happens through the entirety of the game, and honestly it isn't really an issue as the game loads so fast. I can't remember what the loading was like in the PSP version, but it obviously wasn't bad enough to make me stop playing, because I pumped hours into this game. Once we are done faffing about for a bit, we return to the briefing room to talk to Sung, who has been patiently waiting for who knows how long. Before heading out, Zack learns that this assignment was originally Sephiroth's, but he refused to do it.
Oh, what is that? They spoil him too much.
Why don't you say that to his face?
No thanks.
Zack and Sung disembark from the Shinra chopper on the outskirts of a village. There are arched over trees bearing blue fruit all through the village. Sung reveals this to be Benora Village, the hometown of both Angeal and Genesis. They continue towards the village and are confronted by Genesis copies. With there being no signs of the townspeople, it seems that they have taken control over the entire town, thanks to the large arsenal that Genesis took with him when he deserted. The president of Shinra orders him to retrieve or destroy these weapons immediately upon discovery. As Zack fights his way through the Benora apple orchard, he receives a message from his fellow soldier Council.
You got an assignment in Benora, right? How is the place? I hear there are a lot of Shinra people there. Apparently, the village's main source of income is the production and processing of apples. The rest of their budget is made up of subsidies from Shinra. Why would Shinra care about such a tiny village? Could it have something to do with Mako? Or there's gotta be something fishy going on there. I'm gonna look into it.
Just as he makes it into town, Zack is confronted by more Genesis copies and a giant mech. While in combat, Zack's sword swings aren't the only form of attacks that a player can utilise. Materia are a staple of the Final Fantasy VII universe, and they play a big role in customizing both Zack's stats and abilities. The origin of materia isn't really addressed in Crisis Core, as the game kind of assumes that the player at the very least is somewhat familiar with the lore of the Final Fantasy VII setting. Materia is crystallized Mako that is formed into pretty little balls. Mako is also another big lore aspect that the game doesn't really go into, but to put it as simply as possible for those who don't know, Mako is a magical energy that comes from the planet. It's basically a metaphor for real-world fossil fuels. Materia can be formed naturally, but most of the ones used by Shinra are artificially produced in their in-house laboratory. At the beginning of the game, you'll be able to equip Zack with up to 4 materia at once, but later on it's up to 6. There is a huge variety of materia that you will obtain, with varying abilities and effects. You are able to play through the game without using any of them, but honestly, why would you want to do that? Unless you're some sort of psychopath or something. When in combat, commands are assigned according to the slots in which the materia is set to in the equipment menu. Materia that cannot be used in battle will not be displayed as a command option. For Zack to be able to use magic, you must have a certain materia equipped. The effectiveness of magic is determined by multiple different factors. The one that you have the most control over is both the stats of Zack and the materia itself. Like in many other Final Fantasy games, magic has different stages of power. For example, there is fire that develops into fire, then Firaga, all the way up to Flare being the most powerful version of the spell. But when a spell increases in strength, it will usually cost more MP for Zack to cast. Some materia have parameter values such as Magic +3, which when equipped will increase Zack's magic stat by 3. Most materia will become more effective or raise certain status parameters when they level up. The level is indicated by the number of stars. Materia levels up the same way as Zack, by getting lucky spins on the DMW. Some enemies are weak to certain types of magic, as well as resistant. There are also those that are even immune, and will heal if hit with certain spells. Because of this, you'll want to make sure that you have a decent amount of coverage when considering the spells you equip. There are 4 types of materia. Magic materia is green and will allow you to cast spells at the cost of some MP. The yellow materia are the command materia. These will allow you to use abilities at the cost of AP. These abilities are focused around dealing physical damage to enemies, but there are some outliers such as steal that allows you to steal items from enemies instead. Purple materia is special materia, and when equipped, you will receive various beneficial effects, like increasing Zack's maximum MP and increase the chances of getting certain limit breaks. Blue materia is support materia. That is probably the hardest to define. It can do anything from adding elemental attributes to attacks to being able to detect enemy statuses. As the game progresses, you will quickly realize that materia has a much bigger effect on Zack's stats than any amount of leveling will ever do. The best part about the materia system is that all of the stats and abilities are not permanent and can be switched out at any time. If you're sick of playing as a tanky swordsman, you can switch out your materia and become a glass cannon magic slinger. While looking over one of the copies, Sung explains that the cloning technology was stolen from Shinra scientists. It allows Genesis's abilities and traits to be transplanted to soldier members and monsters.
Soldier and monsters? We're the same?
Heading into Benora's residential area, there is still no sign of the townspeople. Sung points out Genesis's large 2-story home. His parents are wealthy landowners, and Jill and Genesis were not just acquaintances, but childhood friends that grew up together, making it more believable that Angeal would have joined up with Genesis, but Zack still refuses to accept this possibility. Sung spots a freshly dug grave and goes to inspect it, while Zack goes to investigate Angeal's house. After looking for a bit, he locates the correct house and enters it to find an older woman sitting at the table. Zack asks if she is Angeal's mother. She in return asks if he is Zack the puppy. Angeal had written to her about Zack, describing him as someone with 0 attention span and as restless as a little puppy. She then goes on to explain that Genesis had returned to the village a month ago with an army of cohorts and then proceeded to kill all of the townspeople.
Genesis. He used to be such a good boy.
Angeal had come here too, but he left his sword behind, the representation of his family's honour. When Angeal joined Shinra, his father had the Buster Sword made for him, in the hopes that he would become an honourable warrior. He had to borrow a lot of money to have it made, and while feverishly working to repay the money, Angeal's father succumbed to fatigue. Zack promises to Angeal's mother that he will take care of her son, and that she should go and hide somewhere.
Don't be concerned. Genesis cannot harm me.
As Zack leaves the house, more Genesis copies show up in town. They have come down from the factory on the outskirts. After the battle, Sung calls Zack and tells him to meet him on the cliff top, overlooking the factory. When you first go through Benora Village, there will be illuminated spots where items are being hidden. For whatever reason, you are not allowed to collect the items right away. Instead, you have to collect them on your way back through the village under a time limit. It's one of the many small mini-games that are scattered throughout the main story campaign. This one isn't all that bad, just the justification for not being able to pick up the items straight away is non-existent, so it is kind of stupid in that way. But later on, there is a couple of these mini-games that absolutely break the tension being built up by the story and ruin the pacing. I get wanting to have a bit of variety in the gameplay, but some of these minigames are just terribly placed. As Zack makes his way over to the top of the cliff, he receives a message from Director Lazard.
Lazard, soldier members, I thank you for your daily hard work. Upon receiving a report on an unspeakably tragic incident, I find myself thinking about parental bonds. Just as happiness can be found in non-biological ties, parent and child can be unhappy even if tied by blood. The difference is whether or not there are feelings of respect and appreciation. Without them, Ill blood is born. Ill blood is prone to lead to tragedy, and ill blood sometimes affects our mission. While Soldier must always execute our missions quickly, we must also focus on risk prevention in the future.
Zack meets up with Sung, who reveals that Genesis's parents were the ones in the freshly dug grave. Zack tells Sung that Angeal wasn't at the house, but believes that if he could find him, he could convince him and maybe even Genesis to come back. Sung now understands why Sephiroth chose Zack to go on this assignment in his stead. Genesis and Angeal were Sephiroth's only friends, and he didn't want to fight them. He is counting on Zack to bring them both back. Zack breaks into the factory through the glass roof. There are more Genesis copies inside. Sung runs on ahead while Zack fights them off. Making their way to the second floor of the factory, they have finally located Genesis, one of the most pretentious Final Fantasy characters ever, and that's saying something. Genesis is sitting by a window reading from a poem called Loveless, which, depending on how you interpret the poem, is just some pseudo-philosophical garbage or something profound connecting to the journey of the main characters. Genesis's obsession with this Loveless poem is constantly brought up whenever he is on screen, and can make his motives kind of hard to understand, because most of the time he's just quoting a poem that more likely than not the player doesn't know, and on top of that it is delivered out of order and is incomplete. So I'm going to save going over Loveless until later on in the video, as it's easy to understand once more of the narrative is revealed. And this is just going to be my interpretation, because even after multiple playthroughs, a lot of its meaning still comes across as vague. A sly smirk forms on Genesis's face as he noticed an infuriated Zack approaching. Nonchalantly, Genesis tucks the book inside his pocket, addressing Zack as Zack the puppy, and advises him to settle down. Sung hastily enters, his attention drawn to a Genesis copy within the Mako refiner. His tone becomes more focused as he mentions discovering the remains of their people at the grave at the house. Genesis, unfazed, reveals how easy it was to manipulate reports with mild threats.
They would have done that anyway. At least your parents would have.
My parents betrayed me. They had always betrayed me from the very beginning.
Fueled by anger, Genesis stands, readying a fire spell, accusing Shinra 2 of betrayal. Quickly, he hurls the spell at Sung, who gets slammed into the machine. Zack moves to draw his sword, but suddenly Angeal appears, standing between Zack and Genesis, with Zack's sword in his hand. Genesis acknowledges Angeal as a partner, and as Angeal faces a crucial decision, Genesis questions if he can truly live on the opposing side. Angeal, looking serious, follows Genesis out, leaving Zack behind despite his attempts to stop him. When Zack opens the factory doors, he encounters two Shinra beasts, ready to confront them. Before any attack happens, both creatures are shot down from behind. Sung appears, putting away his pistol, and urges Zack that they must leave immediately, with no time to waste. Zack wonders if they should look for Angeal and Genesis, but Sung emphasizes the need to erase all evidence of misconduct as per company rules. He reveals that an airstrike will soon neutralize the town. As more beasts approach, Sung asks if anyone is at Angeal's house. Zack hesitates for a second, and Sung urges him to hurry. Zack dashes from the factory towards the town as Sung deals with the beasts. And it is at this point where the game decides to break the tension with a stupid QuickTime event minigame. All you have to do is to destroy the incoming shells by pressing the attack button at the correct time. They attempt to tie it into the story as destroy more evidence for Shinra, but they really could have cut this part out, as right after it there's another sort of minigame, as the one I mentioned earlier where you can pick up the items that you found before but couldn't collect. Except this minigame fits with the pace of what is going on in this story, as you only have a very limited amount of time to pick up everything. Just a heads up, me complaining about these minigames is going to be a reoccurring theme in this video. Back at the house, Zack is shocked to find Angeal's mother dead. As he steps back in surprise, Angeal, looking sad and holding his sword, shows up behind him. Reacting impulsively, Zack grabs Angeal and hurls him against the wall, demanding an explanation for the tragic scene. Angeal, like a limp ragdoll, is tossed at the door and then punched outside. Zack questions the concept of honor, to which Angeal, struggling to stand, explains that his mother could no longer endure life, and neither can her son. Confused and desperate for answers, Zack confronts Angeal, but Genesis interrupts, saying that Angeal can't stay on their side anymore. Angeal, looking crestfallen, sheaths his sword and leaves. Zack attempts to pursue him, but is tripped by Genesis, who taunts him from the ground. As Zack continues to call out to Angeal, Genesis recites a cryptic verse from Loveless, warning of a bleak future.
I don't see Sephiroth today, but are you game?
Genesis then uses a summon materia, triggering a world-altering transformation with strong winds eloping the surroundings. In this changed reality, Bahamut descends onto the battlefield. Crisis Core has some really beautiful pre-rendered cutscenes. They haven't seen any changes from the remake, aside from being upscaled, as well as the hilt of the Buster Sword being changed to the original design. As in the PSP version, the Buster Sword had a bit of a redesign, and it had a more ornate hilt on it, or rain guard, whatever that straight part there is called. Personally, I like both designs, so I'm happy either way. But there is a small issue with the pre-rendered cutscenes. Well, I guess it's not really an issue, but more of a side effect of the advancements of technology, as some aspects of these pre-rendered cutscenes actually don't look as good as the in-game graphics, which is such a bizarre thing to happen. It's mostly in the character skin textures and small little details like that are a bit blurry in the pre-rendered scenes. Some of this will be due to the upscaling, as the original aspect ratio of the PSP was only 480 by 272, which is 4 times smaller than this video. Don't get me wrong, these scenes are still amazing. The cinematography, the choreography, and the animations just come together in a way that could even outshine some more modern titles. Back in Benora, Zack holds the summon materia in his hand, expressing dismay at the misuse of summons. He then questions whether they still have their dreams and honor. Genesis responds, revealing a black wing, which elicits slight disgust from Zack. Genesis declares them as monsters, devoid of dreams and honor, and takes flight, leaving behind black feathers. Zack, in disbelief, catches one of the feathers, as he asserts that being a soldier does not equate to being a monster. Suddenly, bombs start dropping that obliterate Benora, houses, orchards, the entire town. From a cliff, Sung descends on a helicopter, and Zack, witnessing the destruction, gazes back at the burning town. An apple from the wealthy man's crop burns along with the rest of the estate. Zack can only look on with a sense of loss.
Angeal.
On the soldier floor of the Shinra building, Zack stands by a window, reflecting on the conclusion of the Wutai War. He's feeling a lot of different emotions, as he remembers Angeal's Buster Sword and what it means for his family. Zack can't stop thinking about how Angeal saved him in Wutai. He looks down and wonders where Angeal is now. Suddenly, Zack's phone rings, and he answers it cautiously.
Zack here.
It's been a while.
The voice on the other end is Sephiroth, surprising Zack. Following Sephiroth's directive, Zack agrees to go to Lazard's room, his uncertainty evident in his hesitant response. There are sections of the Shinra building that you are able to explore. On the soldier floor, you have access to the training room, where you can do some more squats as well as some actual combat training. There is also the materia room, where they perform materia generation. If you bring them a Mako stone, they can turn them into materia for you. Certain stones make certain materia, and can be a cheap way of getting some pretty decent materia. There's also a cute little side story that plays out if you bring them more and more Mako stones. Basically, the department was on the verge of being shut down because they were underperforming, and by having them make you a bunch of materia, you save the department. It just helps to give character to these otherwise forgettable NPCs. And it also helps Shinra seem less just, haha, evil company is evil, as the people that you interact with at Shinra are just normal people with normal problems, and it just makes the world feel a little bit more believable. Aside from the soldier floor, you can also head down to the lobby. There is this little museum type area where there are a few Easter eggs you can look at, but the one place that you want to make sure that you visit whenever you can is this lady here. She hands out free potions, but she doesn't tell you what it does. In real life, taking unknown drinks from strangers is an absolutely awful idea, but in this game, it is highly recommended. Because the potion is actually a Phoenix Down. Phoenix Downs work a bit differently in Crisis Core. Since Zack is always fighting solo, the Phoenix Down must be taken preemptively and will automatically revive Zack after he falls in battle. Once the Phoenix Down is consumed, it will last until he dies, so you don't need to worry about it losing its effects at the end of combat or anything. But even if you do die, there isn't really that much of a punishment, as you can just retry from the beginning of the fight. The game will even give you the option to change your equipment before trying again. Upon taking the elevator to the director's floor, Sephiroth observes as Zack enters Lazard's office. Zack proceeds to the director's desk, where Lazard swivels his chair to face him, delivering the news.
As of this moment, you are promoted to Soldier First Class.
Zack, however, appears less happy than expected. Lazard acknowledges the overwhelming pace of recent events, to which Sephiroth appears uneasy. Lazard then asks for Zack's assistance once again, prompting a reluctant response from Zack, who questions if another assignment is being thrusted upon him. Sephiroth gives a small apology. Lazard jumps in, telling Zack to put on a Soldier First Class uniform before they talk about the new assignment in the briefing room. In the pod outside of the briefing room, we will find Zack's new uniform. It's black.
It's black! Oh my god!
There are a few new systems that are unlocked after becoming a first class soldier. First of all, you can now equip Zack with up to 6 materia. But even better is we now have access to materia fusion. You can fuse 2 materia together to make a new one. When a new materia is created through fusion, it is usually set at level 1, but when 2 of the same materia are fused, the higher level can be carried over. When a master level materia is used in fusion, a higher ranking materia can be created. This is how you turn spells like Thunder into Thundara, and so on. It costs SP when fusing, and the more powerful the fusion, the more it will cost. You do also have the option to break down materia for SP, but I never had to do this as the game gives plenty of SP. When fusing materia with status parameters, the parameter with the greater value will be carried over to the new materia, and 50% of the lesser parameter's value will be added. This is the mechanic I was alluding to earlier, where you can really buff the hell out of Zack's stats. You can just keep increasing the status parameters on the materia. It is an extremely powerful tool, and later on you can unlock the ability to use items in the fusion process as well, giving you even more ways to customize Zack's stats your way. Just as Zack goes to leave the briefing room, he receives a message from Shinra News.
Personnel announcement 0103 Shinra News. This is an official notification of the change in status for the following personnel. Angeal Hewley, Soldier First Class, killed in action. Genesis Repsodos, Soldier First Class, killed in action.
As Zack returns to the director, Sephiroth is still waiting in the room. Lazard discloses a company decision to take out Genesis, along with his allies, including Angeal. Zack questions if he is going to be the executioner, but Lazard clarifies that the Shinra army will handle that task, citing a lack of trust in Zack's emotional judgment. Sephiroth reveals his intent to join the mission.
That's why I'm going too.
To kill them?
Suddenly, an explosion echoes in the distance, and an alarm blares as all main entrances are sealed. Lazard warns there is an intruder in the building, urging Sephiroth to protect the president, while Zack is tasked to secure the entrance. You are given the option to go directly down to the entrance or make a stop at the soldier floor. If you make an extra stop on the way down, there are a few people you can help on the floor that will reward you with some items and some money. But if you can't be bothered, you can just skip it. Nobody important dies.
I'm dying. Help me.
Having descended to the entrance, Zack is confronted with chaos. Shinra mechs are indiscriminately attacking infantrymen. Zack, confused, doesn't understand why the building is under assault by Shinra's own weapons. Sweepers and Genesis copies are pouring in through the hole in the entrance. Zack rushes down the stairs to confront the onslaught. Now that Zack has been promoted to first class, a combat evaluation is given after each battle. Depending on how you fight will determine how much HP, MP and AP will be restored. For example, if you finish a fight using magic, a percentage of your MP will be restored. It goes without saying that this mechanic makes the game way easier, because you can be way more aggressive with your resource usage. After the battle, Zack eyes one of the masked copies when Sephiroth approaches from behind. Zack informs Sephiroth that the intruders are Genesis copies, leading Sephiroth to speculate that Hollander is behind the attack. Zack is unsure as to who Hollander is, so Sephiroth explains that he is a Shinra scientist who stole the copy technology and then vanished. The two consider the possibility that Hollander and Genesis are working together. Sephiroth voices suspicion that Hollander wants revenge for not being appointed as the head of the Shinra science department. Zack finds that cause pretty petty and questions whether Genesis really is involved. Though skeptical, Sephiroth agrees to withhold his judgment. Turning their attention to Sector 8, Sephiroth directs Zack to join him in addressing the Genesis copies. Spotting two Genesis copies closing in on a black-suited woman in the fountain square, Zack swiftly grabs his sword and rushes in to help. However, a red-haired man holding a baton blocks his path, claiming Sector 8 as Turk's jurisdiction. Another man, accompanied by Sung, emerges, hindering Zack's progress. Frustrated, Zack implores Sung to take action, but to his surprise, the woman, now armed with a red shuriken thing that looks kinda like Axel's weapon from Kingdom Hearts, adeptly dispatches the copies. Since Soldier is having trouble dealing with the situation, the Turks have been sent in. Zack watches Rena and Rude ascend the Sector 8 stairs to secure the streets.
So now we're outsourcing to the Turks.
Soldiers being stingy.
There's a manpower shortage. Done. You're a Turk too?
I'm Cisne.
I'm Zack. Pleasure to meet ya.
As Sung reminds Zack of his mission, Cisne quietly laughs and Zack offers his assistance. Sung tries to decline, but Cisne quickly thanks Zack before bidding farewell to them as she runs down Loveless Avenue. The Turks is a nickname for the Shinra's Black Ops military division. They are notorious in Midgar, renowned for their use of violence, intimidation, and blackmail to accomplish covert missions. The Turks operate behind the scenes, leaving a trail of fear and bad reputation. Easily recognizable in their iconic suits, there was a Japanese exclusive mobile game before Crisis, which I have not played, that focuses on the Turks, and more specifically Cisne. I think the story is retold in Ever Crisis, which I also haven't played, but maybe one day I will. Anyway, back to this game. Following Cisne, Zack heads to Loveless Avenue. Near the theatre, Cisne faces off against a powerful Genesis copy. Zack quickly engages it in battle. Something that has a big impact on the DMV system is Zack's emotions. When Zack's emotions are heightened and the bond between him and one of several characters grows stronger, the character's portrait will be added to the DMW. Interactions with the characters at certain points in the story will greatly increase the chance of matching their portraits. The DMW is connected to Zack's memories, and when a new image is added, certain memories play as images from Zack's heart. These short little scenes do help to elaborate on Zack's relationships with characters that happen off screen, but they do interrupt the flow of battles, and you will often get repeats, which makes sense because I often find myself reminiscing on certain memories over and over again, even the ones I really would prefer not to. Fortunately, when memories do come up, you can just skip them. Unfortunately, you can't do the same thing in real life. After meeting Cisne, we now have access to her limit break, and unlike the majority of limit breaks, it isn't a damage dealing move. Instead, when Lucky Stars is activated, it heightens the emotion gauge, raising the chances of triggering more limit breaks. The emotion gauge is under the DMW. This will affect the success ratio of the spins, both in a negative and positive way, depending on the state. When Zack's emotions are low, which almost never happens, the chances of getting a good roll on the DMW goes down to 2.3% chance. The highest emotional state is Heavenly, which gives you an 18.8% chance of getting something good from the DMW, and this is the percentage chance for each roll. So you can imagine how being in Heavenly state can snowball into just destroying everything. With the DMW constantly spinning during a fight, it will not always be landing on matching portraits, but even if you don't get a matching set of 3, you still have a chance of receiving a buff. If you land on the right combination of numbers, you are able to have multiple buffs active at one time. Matching 3 7s or 3 1s will make Zack invincible for 15 seconds. This buff is fantastic in almost any situation. It allows you to tank any attack, even the huge super attacks that some bosses have. and it also allows you to go berserk on enemies, basically consequence free. All you have to worry about is making sure you pay attention as to when it will run out. Matching 3 6s will make it so all of your attacks become critical attacks. Matching 3 5s means you won't take damage from physical attacks for 15 seconds, but magic based attacks can still damage you. A set of 3s is the same effect but in reverse, so no damage taken from magic. A matching set of 4s gives you unlimited AP to the end of a battle, and a set of 2s is unlimited magic. Getting either of these 2 buffs is just awesome. Your damage output just skyrockets when you can spam your most powerful magics or abilities at no charge. Then there are the buffs that you get from landing 7s on the DMW. I'll give you 7 guesses as to why the number 7 is treated as special. A 7 in the left and middle slot will give you 0 MP consumption for 15 seconds. A 7 in the left and right slot will give you invincibility to physical damage for 15 seconds. And a 7 in the middle and the right slot is invincibility to magic damage for 15 seconds. Just a 7 on the left will give you 0 AP consumption for 12 seconds. A single 7 in the middle is a 0 MP consumption for 12 seconds. And a single 7 on the right will give you the endure status for 20 seconds. The endure status basically means that Zack cannot be interrupted when casting magic or knocked back by attacks. He will still take damage though. When combined with other buffs such as 0 MP costs, endure can be pretty powerful. Like I said before, the DMW wants you to win rolls, and there are plenty of chances for you to get something good. There are even materials that you can equip that will increase odds of getting certain rolls. All of these buffs will be displayed on Zack's meters, and the game will tell you when you are receiving these buffs, so you don't have to have your eyes glued to the slot machine to see what rolls you're getting. Each roll only costs 10 soldier points, or SP for short, which considering you'll be getting a ton of these for each enemy you kill, you'll most likely never come close to running out. I actually don't even know what happens if you run out. It's that hard not to earn SP. I guess that the DMW just won't spin. Enemies have set amounts that they will give you per kill, but if you can chain kills together without being hit, the SP reward will be multiplied.
When I was a kid, I always wanted to have wings. You know, like an angel.
If people had wings, they'd be monsters.
Wings symbolize freedom for those who have none. They don't symbolize monsters.
Cissnei acknowledges Zack's soldier prowess, and as she departs for the next assignment, she gives Zack access to a new shop. Shops can be accessed at any time from the main menu. More shops become available when their addresses are acquired through mission rewards and progressing the main story. If it wasn't obvious enough, shops are where you can buy items using the gil you have earned. You'll also naturally acquire items as you progress through the game, from opening chests and as rewards for completing missions. During battle, you can use potions and other items to heal HP, restore AP and MP, and all sorts of effects depending on the items used. You can carry up to 99 of each item if you can afford it. You'd think that the items have the potential to be overpowered, which in a way they kind of are considering you can access the shop whenever you want, but items will never be as powerful as their fully upgraded spell counterparts. I would say that items are quite powerful during the early game, but they do start to fall behind from the mid-game onward. But if you're good at timing your item usage well during battle, they are a perfectly viable option if you don't want to sacrifice any of your limited materia slots with white magic spells. Zack answers his phone, receiving instructions from Sephiroth to come to the Mako Reactor 5 once Sector 8 is cleared. Sephiroth reveals that Angeal has been sighted.
So it's search and destroy?
The army is mobilizing, but there's still time. You and I will find them before they do.
And what?
Fail.
To eliminate them.
For real?
Yes, for real.
Awesome! We're gonna fail!
Zack enters Mako Reactor 5, where monsters have infested the facility. As he moves forward, a monster drops from the ceiling, engaging Zack in battle. Some enemies are capable of using extremely powerful abilities, some of which can even inflict status ailments, so you want to make sure that you guard against them. Luckily, these sorts of attacks always have a cast time that appears above the enemy, so you are able to prepare for it. The small icons above Zack's health bar indicate any status effects that are currently active. The blue icons are buffs and the red icons are debuffs. Enemies will also have these displayed on their health bars too. Debuffs are applied when hit by certain enemy attacks. Most will go away after a short amount of time or until the end of battle. You are able to use items or Asuna to remove these effects. Some debuffs can be devastating for some builds. For example, the silence effect, which makes Zack unable to cast spells, is debilitating if you rely on magic. The best way to avoid this is to equip Zack with an accessory that makes him immune to such an effect. There are a bunch of accessories with a bunch of different effects. These can be equipped in the same menu as materia, and you can have multiple different loadouts set, so it plays to experiment and see what best fits your playstyle, or even to have specialized loadouts for certain areas of the game. You will never be able to protect yourself against everything, and sometimes you just have to rely on items, or just dumb luck. Once the monster is defeated, Zack is shocked when he finds that it bears the face of his mentor, Angeal. Then Sephiroth appears, revealing that Genesis isn't the only one capable of being copied. Reflecting on the past, Sephiroth recalls their friendship in the company training room when Genesis, Angeal and he used to sneak in for fun. Zack notes that they must have had a close bond, prompting Sephiroth to reminisce on their time together. Atop the Junon cannon, Genesis reads from the book Loveless.
Oh, perfect. It's in Japanese. Jingchao Nong Ning Dao. Wait, that's Chinese.
Loveless, Act 1.
You remembered.
How can I not, when you've beaten it into my head?
The battle commences as Angeal and Genesis face off against Sephiroth. Despite their combined efforts, Sephiroth easily holds his own.
All hail Sephiroth, huh?
Genesis, determined to face Sephiroth alone, ignites his blade, declaring the need for a new hero. The intense clash unfolds, with energy and fire spells exchanged. Genesis overwhelms Sephiroth, forcing him on the defensive, but Angeal intervenes, urging for them to stop as the fight escalates. In the chaos, Genesis explodes a fireball right in Angeal's face, causing him to fall from the sky. Sephiroth and Genesis continue their fierce duel on the crumbling cannon, with Sephiroth eventually launching a powerful offensive. The battle moves to the main platform, where Sephiroth and Genesis clash. Angeal intervenes once more, stopping their blades. Genesis casts a blizzard spell, leading to an explosion that causes Angeal's blade to shatter, hitting Genesis.
Genesis!
Despite his injuries, Genesis assures he'll be fine, and as the VR room crashes, he walks away, reciting lines from Loveless.
Even if the morrow is barren of promises, nothing shall forestall my return.
Back at Mako Reactor 5, Zack asks Sephiroth if everything was alright. Sephiroth confirmed that Genesis was fine, but Angeal's situation was different. Curious, Zack asks for details, and Sephiroth, smirking, revealed that he received one of Angeal's famous lectures about discipline, dreams, and honor. Understandingly, Zack commented on the familiar nature of such lectures. As Sephiroth walked back to inspect a dead monster, he confirmed the troubling truth that they were in league with Hollander. Journeying further into Mako Reactor 5, Sephiroth shares information about Hollander's secret laboratory and the potential to find details about Angeal's whereabouts there. Ready to investigate, Zack and Sephiroth find a ladder leading further below. They come to a door that needs Mako power to open. Zack descends to the lowest level of the reactor and restores the flow of power. With the door now open, they enter the secret facility. The room houses Mako chambers and lab equipment. Sephiroth, examining one of the chambers, expressed disdain at the sight. Moving away, he instructed Zack to search for the confidential research documents stolen by Hollander. As Zack explores, he discovered a Mako chamber containing a monster with Angeal's face, prompting shock and questions about the purpose of creating such copies. Zack then reads the document he found on the unmade bed.
Project G. Summary. Objective. Implant the cells of an ancient into a human fetus to imbue said fetus with the ancient's abilities. Report on the soldier degradation phenomenon. The heightened abilities of soldier members are maintained by a delicate balance of various genetic factors. A change in this balance could only be caused by a leak of genetic information, but this is not possible under normal circumstances. This phenomenon is unique to soldier type G.
Next to the Mako chamber, he finds another document.
The Ancients Project. Outline. It is now an undisputed fact that the life form excavated from the Earth is indeed of the ancient race spoken of in legend. Furthermore, history records that these ancients channeled the power of this planet to tear the Earth asunder. Using the cells of the unearthed ancient, we have begun research on creating and mass-producing a race with comparable abilities. The primary objective of this research is to significantly reduce Mako excavation costs.
Zack grimaces, expressing his discomfort. Sephiroth approaches, mentioning it happened before Genesis deserted.
The wound was superficial, but for some reason, Genesis wasn't healing.
Professor Hollander, how is Genesis?
The problem is the Mako energy that seeped in through the wound.
Is it treatable?
First, he'll need a transfusion. You aren't viable.
Why couldn't I be the donor?
Sephiroth reveals that Project G gave rise to the man known as Genesis. Zack expresses curiosity about Project G, and Sephiroth clarifies it as Project Genesis, highlighting Genesis's evident changes contrary to the report. Zack questions if it's degradation, and Sephiroth adds that it's more than that. Sephiroth gazes with utter disgust into a Mako chamber. Hollander enters the room, surprised to see Sephiroth. Sephiroth confronts Hollander about the degradation process, and Hollander claims only he can stop it. Suddenly, Genesis descends from the ceiling, pointing his sword at Sephiroth and shielding Hollander with his wing. Genesis declares that Sephiroth won't take Hollander and lets him escape. Sephiroth instructs Zack to pursue Hollander. Genesis recites another passage from Loveless, narrating a tale of 3 friends entering battle, and with only one emerging as the hero. Turning to Sephiroth, he provocatively inquires whether, in a reenactment of the scene, Sephiroth would claim the role of the hero. Uninterested, Sephiroth brushes off the question, but Genesis, in a fit of pettiness, refuses to acknowledge Sephiroth's potential glory. Instead, he harbours the belief that the hero's mantle should rightfully be his, and expresses his relentless pursuit of the gift of the goddess. I'm gonna be honest, I really do not like this whole loveless aspect to the storytelling. It just makes Genesis so hard to connect with, because he is so vague about what he is even trying to do. Yeah, he wants the gift of the goddess, and in his confusion he thinks he is the hero of the story, but this is conveyed in such an airy-fairy way that it makes him really hard to care about. Consequently, the loveless aspect of the storytelling not only hampers the connection with Genesis, but also weakens the overall impact of the narrative. The following section plays out like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, with Hollander constantly scurrying away. You'd think that a first-class soldier should be able to easily catch up with a fat middle-aged man, but I guess not. One of the most controversial aspects of this remake, at least among fans, was the change in the voice cast. Reunion features the voice cast from the Final Fantasy remake, which overall I think is superior to the previous voice cast, as I think that they encapsulate the characters a lot better. And a lot of this comes down to better direction in my opinion. As I've mentioned a couple of times, the Final Fantasy VII compilation had a much more somber tone, and it really made some of the characters feel kind of out of character in a lot of instances. Crisis Core suffered a lot less from the somber tone, and in turn the original performances were actually really good, and more specifically, Rick Gomez did a really great job at portraying Zack. So many fans were quite annoyed that he wasn't reprising his role. Zack's new voice actor is Caleb Pierce, and when I first started playing the game, I really did not like the sound of his voice, if I'm being perfectly honest. Some of this is me just having nostalgia for the original voice, but also from genuinely not liking the sound of his voice. But as the game went on, I did get used to the change, and I think the voice actor done a really great job, but so did the original.
Genesis's parents were in that grave.
Wait, his own family?
We can't expect reason from him. What about Angeal?
He wasn't at the house. But please, give me time. If I find Angeal, I can talk to him. If I can convince Angeal, maybe Genesis will come back too.
Genesis's parents were in that grave.
Wait, his own family?
We can't expect reason from him. What about Angeal?
He wasn't at the house. But please, give me time. If I find Angeal, I can talk to him. If I can convince Angeal, maybe Genesis will come back too.
So when it really comes down to it, it's mainly up to pure taste for me, and I just like the sound of Rick's voice better. Overall though, the voice acting is great, and there is a lot more of it too. A lot of the minor interactions with NPCs are now fully voiced, so if you don't like reading, Reunion is definitely the version for you. After a few fights, Zack manages to catch up with Hollander.
Working for Hollander now? What is it you're after?
World domination.
That's not even funny, man.
How about revenge?
For what?
Angeal reveals a single white wing, astonishing Zack, as Angeal asks what monsters seek. Zack catches a feather and declares that they are not wings of a monster, but wings of an angel. Angeal wonders what angels fight for and dream of. He approaches Zack, who pleads to know, and Angeal reveals angels dream of being human. Suddenly, Angeal punches Zack in the gut, throwing him back. Zack gets up to fight, but then he decides against it. Angeal demands that Zack defend himself. Despite Angeal's anger, Zack smiles. Angeal unleashes a shockwave, hitting Zack, causing the grating below him to give way, and Zack falls to the world below.
Hello?
Mom?
Hello? Hooray!
Heaven?
Not quite. It's a church.
An angel?
No, I'm Aerith. You fell from the sky.
Huh?
Scared me.
So you saved me, huh?
Not really. Hello? That's all I did.
Zack expressed gratitude, suggesting he owed her something. Aerith brushed it off, but Zack, determined to repay her, proposed a date, receiving a playful rejection. As Zack started to leave, Aerith warned him not to step on the flowers. Flowers are a rarity within Midgar, and Zack suggests selling them for profit. Aerith offers to show him to the central slums, where he'll be able to go back above the plate. I really do think that the callbacks that Crisis Core makes to the original are implemented really well, as they still work within the context of this game's narrative, and don't take away from the experience for those who don't necessarily get the references. There is so much media that relies on the audience's nostalgia for something to be funny or for it to make sense, but Crisis Core does a great job at mitigating this. Yeah, there are some things that are just straight up in the game just because, but most of it is relegated to side content. Zack pauses to observe their surroundings and remarks on the stifling atmosphere. Zack expresses how living under the plate would make someone miss the sky. Surprisingly, Aerith confesses that she finds the sky frightening, feeling like it's pulling her in. Zack reassures her and promises to show her a beautiful, real sky one day. They then enter into the slums marketplace that leads into probably my least favourite part of the game. While in the market area, Zack gets pickpocketed by a little kid, and you have to run around talking to the locals, trying to track the kid down, and the whole thing just drags on for way too long and is quite boring. It's literally you talk to an NPC, then watch a cutscene of the kid getting away, and then talk to another NPC and watch another cutscene of the kid getting away, and you do that like 4 times. And this all leads up to Aerith helping you catch the kid, and it turns out that he just stole the money because he needs it to buy medicine for his grandfather. And it's like, I get that the game is trying to make the kid's situation sympathetic, but it doesn't really work because the game's just wasted half an hour of my time chasing him around in a really unfun gameplay loop. and now I couldn't care less about the kid. The boy originally did have the money for the medicine, but he was attacked by monsters just outside of the market. Zack then goes to kill the monsters to get the wallet back for the boy. Returning to the market, Zack is met with the boy's disgust reaction to the slimy wallet. Zack lets him go, advising him not to steal and to seek help next time. The boy mocks Zack for his apparent lack of money. Zack vehemently denies the mockery, asserting his future wealth through Operation Midgar full of flowers, wallet full of money. The boy, amused, departs while Zack and Aerith discuss their flower selling venture. Despite initial skepticism, Zack suggests creating a flower wagon. Before leaving the market, the two of them stop off at the accessory shop, where Zack insists on buying Aerith a gift to thank her for helping him earlier. The shopkeeper will ask whether Zack is her boyfriend, and Aerith's response changes depending on a hidden affection meter that is affected by little choices that are made during the previous segment.
How's that?
Does it look right?
I think so. Yeah, it looks great.
Thank you, Zack. I'll treasure this.
I'm going to be honest, when I first played this game, it didn't even register that Aerith wasn't wearing her iconic bow. It's one of those things that doesn't really need to be explained, but it is a very cute moment that adds to the characters' relationship in an unobtrusive way. After that, they head to another iconic location, the playground, for a little impromptu date. As Zack and Aerith stroll into the playground, Aerith curiously inquires about Zack's encounter with soldier members and wonders if they are truly happy. She questions the special surgeries undergone by soldiers. Zack, initially vague, eventually discloses that he himself is a soldier.
Actually, I'm with Soldier.
I'm sorry. So pretty.
The face?
The eyes.
You like them? Then take a closer look. Eyes infused with Mako energy. A soldier trademark.
Oh, you.
Color of the sky, right?
Uh-huh. But not scary at all.
Zack asks about Aerith's life, prompting her to recall the unexpected appearance of a man falling from the sky. Zack then receives a phone call from Sephiroth, revealing an attack by Genesis on the Shinra building. He apologizes for his sudden departure. Aerith, understanding, bids him farewell, questioning if they will meet again. Zack assures her with a confident,
"Of course,"
before Aerith wishes him well.
I hope that your friend's okay, Zack.
Huh?
You talk in your sleep.
Yeah. It'll be fine. I know that now.
As Zack races along Sector 0 highway towards Shinra building, fires blaze around him. Zack charges forward, ready to put an end to the threat. He is quickly surrounded by Genesis goons, but swiftly dispatches them. However, a much more formidable opponent emerges. Since meeting Aerith, we have access to the Healing Wave Limit Break. This is another unique limit break that fully heals HP, MP, and AP, breaks limits, heals status ailments, and grants temporary invincibility. When Zack's HP or MP breaks the limit, it means that he has gone over its max amount. You are able to use this MP or whatever it is, but you cannot restore over the limit using items or magic. This can only be done through the DMW. Zack defeats the G-Warrior, signaling a moment of respite. As he catches his breath, Angeal descends from the sky, asking for Zack's help and sharing his struggle with a foggy mind. Despite uncertainties, Angeal urges Zack to join him in battling all sources of suffering. After a moment of contemplation, Zack agrees, only to find Angeal gone. Angeal then reappears behind him, picking up Zack and soaring directly towards Shinra HQ. How the hell do you even fly with one wing? Wouldn't you just fly in a circle? Honestly, I don't even really care. It just looks weird. On the 67th floor, Sephiroth effortlessly dispatches a Genesis copy before electrifying another one behind him. Angeal descends through a shattered window, dropping Zack into the corridor, where they regroup with Sephiroth. Apologetic for his tardiness, Zack is met with Sephiroth's characteristic indifference, and Jill suggests that Hollander has tasked Genesis with eliminating Hojo, the director of the science department, due to perceived injustice, as Hollander thinks that the position of director should be his. Sephiroth dismissively instructs them to forget about Hojo, and buggers off. Jill then tells Zack to handle Hojo on the science department floor. Zack runs down the corridor and reflects on the uncertainties surrounding Jill. However, their partnership reassures him as he heads towards the science department. Taking an elevator to the next floor, Zack arrives in the fusion chamber, finding Hojo at work. After a cautious greeting, Zack informs Hojo about the Genesis army's attack and offers protection. Hojo, unimpressed, downplays the threat, regarding Genesis as nothing more than a degrading monster, a memento of an unenlightened era, when men would deem any unclassified life form as an ancient. Hojo mentions Genova, the calamity that fell from the sky, and emphasizes soldiers' duty is not to think but to protect those who think for them. Hojo is such a bastard. The Final Fantasy VII franchise as a whole does such a good job at making him utterly detestable. The term ancients refers to an ancient and advanced civilization that once existed on the planet. The ancients were also known as the Cetra. They were a mystical and highly spiritual people with a deep connection to the planet and its life stream, the flow of spiritual energy that sustains life. The life stream is where the Mako energy is pulled from, as well as materia, and pretty much everything else in this game. I like to think of the life stream as the heartbeat of the planet in Final Fantasy VII. It's a magical energy that connects everything and keeps life going. In the real world, we don't have something exactly like the life stream, but we do understand the importance of nature and how different living things depend on each other for survival. At this point, you can choose to do a few more mini games to obtain some extra items and gil. The most substantial one will have you stealing keys from some beasts that Zack accidentally releases on the lower floor. It's both a mini game and a sort of tutorial for the steel materia that the kid gives you in the Sector 5 slums. Unlike some of the other mini games, all of the ones in this section can be skipped, but I usually always do the one with the keys because it's actually quite fun, as it sticks closely to the core gameplay, just with a little bit of a twist to it, and also you get some nice stuff for doing it. As Hojo is monitoring equipment, a few black feathers fall around him, signaling the arrival of an unexpected guest. Turning around, he faces Genesis, who raises his sword at Hojo. Hojo mocks Genesis, suggesting that Hollander's promises won't save him from degradation, and Jill intervenes, urging Genesis to stop. Despite the tension, Hojo dismissively labels them as Hollander's freak show. Genesis and Zack momentarily lower their swords as Genesis recites lines from Loveless Act 4. Intrigued, Hojo mentions the missing final act of the ancient epic. The elusive gift of the goddess is a reoccurring theme in Loveless, described as the bringer of life, without further clarification. The poem's final chapter remains missing, leaving the fate of the world after receiving the gift open to interpretation, and there are various theories. Genesis, however, clings to the belief that this gift holds the key to curing his degradation. The game doesn't really do that good of a job of conveying this to the player, but Genesis is trying to reenact Loveless in the hopes of receiving the gift of the goddess. Genesis shatters the chamber with a fire spell, creating an exit. As Genesis begins to fly away, Zack and Jill pursue him. Genesis uses a summon materia atop the Shinra building and summons Bahamut Fury. Offensive spells are my favourite way to play. There are just so many options, especially when you gain access to materia fusion. But offensive spells aren't the only type of magic that Zack has access to. There are also spells that can heal Zack. The Cure spell is probably the most well known one of these, and just like the offensive spells like fire, it too can be upgraded to be more effective. I usually opt out of equipping healing spells to Zack's loadout as they take up precious slots, and instead I rely on using more items. As the debris settles, Zack stands victorious, looking around the now silent scene atop the Shinra building, wondering where everyone has gone.
Where did everyone go?
Sometime later, Zack is back on the soldier floor, trying to get into contact with Sephiroth, but is unable to. Upon receiving a call from Aerith, Zack's mood shifts. Aerith inquires about the promise he made to make a flower wagon for her. Zack assures Aerith he hasn't forgotten, and hastily ends the call, intending to fulfill his promise. On the way to the elevator, Zack receives a message from Consul.
Sephiroth's whereabouts. Consul. You were complaining about not being able to get in touch with Sephiroth, but he's in the data room. It looks like he's going through all the research papers on a series of experiments called Project G, as well as other experiments conducted around the same time. Project G took place over 20 years ago, and Hollander has taken some of that data with him. I even hear that some of the really important data isn't even here, but hidden away in some other place. I don't know if anyone is ever going to understand the full scope of those experiments.
On the way to the church, Zack strolls into the Sector 5 slums when Angeal unexpectedly descends behind him.
Angeal? Where have you been?
Sorry. I've been a little busy.
Yeah, great. Can't reach Sephiroth either.
What's going on?
Nothing. He's just cooped up in the data room, looking into stuff in the past or something.
I see.
Whoa! You're taking off? What did you come here for?
Genesis and Hollander are in Modeoheim now.
Oh. You're reporting. So you're still working?
I'm still a soldier member in spirit. I've informed Lazard. They'll pick you up.
Sung intercepts Zack on his way to the church. Urgently, Sung assigns Zack to Modeoheim, revealing that Aerith is not even at the church right now. Tensions rise as Zack questions Sung's connection to Aerith, but he refuses to give details. A helicopter lands, prompting Zack to reluctantly board it, leaving a white feather blowing in the wind near the church doors. Unfortunately, the chopper crashed because the pilot was drunk. Okay, fine. He wasn't drunk. He was just incompetent. I'm actually not sure which is worse. Zack wakes up amidst the wreckage on the frozen cliffs of Modeoheim. He finds Sung and 2 Shinra infantrymen, and they proceed with the mission despite the crash. The team navigates the ravine, with Zack and an infantryman pulling ahead of the group.
Yo! Don't fall too far behind! At least someone's keeping up.
Well, I'm a country boy too.
From where?
Nibelheim. How about you?
Me? Gungaga. Hey! What's so funny about that? You know Gungaga?
No, but it's such a backwater name.
Ditto Nibelheim.
Like you've been there.
I haven't. But there's a reactor there, right? A Mako reactor outside Midgar usually means
Nothing else out there.
Good news, Sung! Me and...
Cloud.
Oh my god!
Me and Cloud here are both backwater experts. Oh yeah!
Later, as Zack and Cloud traverse the ravine, Cloud expresses curiosity about soldier life. Zack, offering encouragement, assures Cloud that joining Soldier is an obtainable dream. The team encounters a Mako excavation test site, and Zack volunteers to investigate, setting the stage for one of the worst parts of the game. It is this really stupid stealth section. I don't know what it is with game developers and including stealth sections in games that do not have stealth mechanics. There are a few guards patrolling the facility. If you are detected, they will give chase, and a battle will ensue if they catch up to you. You can escape detection by crouching behind objects. While hiding in the marked areas, you will not be detected. Because of the weather, your body temperature will go down if you stay in one place for too long. When your body temperature hits 26 degrees, you fail the mission. You can keep warm by doing squats. There are 5 chests that you can find in the area, but you will lose one if you enter battle, move outside the facility grounds, or your body temperature goes below 26. Honestly, I just go the route of least resistance. I don't care enough about the extra chests. The door is right around the corner and the guards are a bit blind and deaf. After entering the facility, Zack gets on a giant elevator to go further up. As Hollander retreats, Genesis confronts him with a sword at his neck, prompting a tense exchange. The elevator carrying Zack arrives and he intervenes, protecting Hollander from Genesis. Cloud assists by grabbing Hollander, but the scientist manages to escape, leaving Zack to face Genesis in a fierce battle. Genesis's design is based on the real-world Japanese singer Gact, who apparently is also an actor. but the only things I know of him is from this game and also the music that was in Dirge of Cerberus. I honestly thought that because Genesis was based off this guy that the game would never get a re-release because Square Enix didn't have the rights to his likeness anymore, but thankfully I was wrong. And even if they didn't have the rights, they could always just change Genesis's design, but then they'd have to remake all the pre-rendered cutscenes, which would be a real shame. Eventually Genesis is defeated and acknowledges his fate as a monster.
We're not monsters, you hear me? We're soldier. Where's your honor?
If this world seeks my destruction, it goes with me.
Genesis.
Zack exits the facility and finds no sign of Sung or Cloud. He then notices a path leading to Modioheim, deciding to head in that direction, taking him through an abandoned village.
Snowy Village, Kunzel. So now you're in Modioheim, right? Isn't that near Icicle Inn, the permafrost area? It must be freezing cold out there. That area was once a candidate for Mako excavation, when it was abuzz with construction workers and scientists around the Shinra facility. But after the plans for a Mako reactor were canned, the village was deserted. That is, until reports of disturbing activity started popping up recently. The seclusion and harshness of the environment must make it a convenient location for anti-Shinra groups.
As Zack approaches the entrance to the bathhouse, he receives another message.
Shinra's shadows, Lazard. Soldier members, I thank you for your daily hard work. Shinra's rapid growth has given birth to distortions in many parts of the world. They are Shinra's shadows, dark entities that the President and the Vice President must confront. That, in turn, may define us as victims of Shinra's shadows. However, we, as employees of the Shinra Company, must act with accountability, and I trust that you will do just that, even without my leadership. Thank you, and good luck.
Upon entering the dilapidated bathhouse, Zack is taken by surprise as a griffin swoops into the room. Without hesitation, he engages in battle with the creature. After taking it out, he observes it closely and notices a face embedded on the top of the griffin's head.
Angeal monsters. Does that mean he's here?
Ascending the stairs, Zack encounters Cloud lying on the ground, and Zack rushes to his side. Cloud attempts to get up, but collapses again.
I'm okay.
Sung is also found slumped against the wall. Sung directs Zack's attention to the door, urging him to pursue Hollander as Angeal awaits him. With a determined nod, he races after them. Heading through the hall towards the room at the end, Zack discovers Angeal waiting for him. Angeal expresses regret, feeling responsible for not dealing with Genesis himself. However, he sent Zack to prepare him for the impending battle. Tensions rise as Angeal points his Buster Sword at Zack's head, and a clash ensues. The confrontation is interrupted by the arrival of Hollander, who stirs painful memories for Angeal. Hollander reveals the dark truth about Angeal's origins.
My mother's shame made her take her own life.
Shame. How terribly misguided. She should have been proud. Proud that she was the namesake of our experiment. Project G. Or should I say, Project Jillian?
Don't say her name.
Jillian, the woman implanted with Genova cells. Genesis, who had her genes mapped onto him during the fetal stage. Yes, Genesis was a failure. I'll admit it. But you, Angeal, you were actually bred inside Jillian's body. You are perfection.
Zack, I am perfect. A perfect monster. My cells can absorb genetic traits and pass them along to others.
A two-way conduit. Genova's power has passed on to you completely.
Zack, do you remember what I said about our enemy being all that creates suffering?
Yeah, but you're not one of them.
but I created my own suffering. Zack, let me show you.
Stop it! You don't know what you're doing!
As the revelations unfold, Angeal summons monsters with his traits, and Hollander tries to seize samples from him. The monsters, however, ignore both Zack and Hollander, and converge on Angeal, initiating a transformation. Angeal returns as Angeal Penance, striking Zack and challenging his sense of honor. The conflicted Zack prepares for battle. Crisis Core has some really awesome monster designs. They do a good job of straddling the line of being both monstrous and angelic. The overall presentation of this game is fantastic. The redone graphics, while not on par with the Final Fantasy VII Remake, still look really good. Apart from some of the characters here, there is something not quite right with it. It almost looks like the characters shampooed their hair but didn't rinse it out properly. You know what I mean? The character models are highly detailed and they look great in motion, for the most part. Some of the animations are really stilted, especially those of the background NPCs. They were like this in the PSP version too, but when the models and textures are of higher fidelity, it just accentuates the robotic nature of some of these movements. The combat animations are fantastic though. Zack's quick movements and snappy attacks are so satisfying to execute. All of the magic and other special effects are so vibrant and elaborate, but not to the point where you can't tell what is going on. The PSP version still looks great in my opinion. I mean, considering the limitations of the hardware, it's quite impressive what the developers were able to pull off. But I will admit that Reunion does top it in almost every aspect when it comes to the visuals.
Zack, you have my thanks. This is for you. Protect your honor, always. Embrace your dreams. If you want to be a hero, you need to have dreams and honor.
Hey, Zack? The sky is closer in the city above, right? Kinda scary. But the flowers might like it. Maybe.
This game does a great job of depicting grief. This scene of Aerith embracing Zack as he mourns his mentor's death is so relatable for me, and I suspect for a lot of others too. I feel like a lot of us try to avoid grief by keeping ourselves busy, but when we stop and are in the presence of someone we feel safe with, the grief that we were trying to avoid finally catches up with us. It's a powerful reminder that grief is a universal experience that can't be ignored or suppressed indefinitely. This scene beautifully captures the raw emotions and vulnerability that comes with confronting loss. making it a truly impactful moment in the game. This is a very underrated moment in gaming that deserves more recognition and appreciation. Zack strides past a line of Shimmer infantrymen, his keen eyes single out Cloud within the ranks, and a confident smirk graces his face. Addressing the aspiring soldiers, Zack imparts some advice, emphasizing the significance of embracing their dreams and safeguarding their soldier honor. Zack focuses the imposing Buster Sword to his forehead. The enthusiastic response from the rookies is met with Zack's unwavering determination, holding the Buster Sword high into the sky.
Project G was Angeal's mother's experiment. I apprehended Hollander in Modeoheim and turned him over to the company. After that, the company put me on standby. That was a while ago. Shinra is in disarray. The Turks are hanging around me every day. They say our vacations overlapped coincidentally. Yeah, right. But none of them ever mention Angeal or Genesis. Not a whisper. Almost as if they never existed. Is that how little Soldier is worth? What exactly do I have left to fight for? What is Soldier honor?
On vacation in Costa del Sol, he channels his frustration into intense squats on the beach. Cisne interrupts, offering suntan lotion, but Zack is preoccupied with the sense that he's been sidelined. Cisne reveals Director Lazar's disappearance and the company's involvement in funding Hollander's research. Zack, bewildered by the revelations, contemplates the motives of people around him. Cisne then cryptically mentions Aerith, the last ancient in the world.
The only one left in the world, huh? She is one of a kind.
Then Sung comes rushing down the stairs and warns of Genesis copies emerging from the ocean. Zack, armed with a beach umbrella, engages in a surprising battle against the remnants of Genesis's influence. The unexpected encounter raises questions about Genesis's lingering presence. After defeating the copies, they investigate one of the falling divers, emitting a strange energy. Sung speculates on Genesis's potential connection to the livestream, hinting at a possible spiritual control over the copies. The idyllic vacation comes to an abrupt end as Sung announces an attack on Juon, compelling Zack to join him in the investigation. In the chaotic streets of Junon, Zack, accompanied by Cisne and Sung, witnesses the city ablaze, with panicked residents fleeing the scene. Troopers bearing Genesis's influence pursue them, prompting Zack to unsheath the iconic Buster Sword. Now wielding the Buster Sword, Zack has learnt to take a battle stance. By expending AP, Zack can charge a stance which has a guarding effect. When in the battle stance, the attack command is changed to strong attack, which greatly increases the impact of abilities. What makes this attack even better is that Zack does not flinch when attacked. The more Zack uses the Buster Sword, the greater his proficiency becomes with the weapon, which in turn provides many beneficial effects during battle. There is an upper limit to how much proficiency can be raised in one battle though. I tested it on this mission that spawns a shitload of these worms, and it did stop increasing at some point. Also, as the Buster Sword gets stronger, you will have to do more than just attack. It will require breaking through barriers, guarding, and stuff like that, if you want to get it to 100%. Sung, analysing a fallen Genesis copy, deduces that Hollander is present in Junon, suggesting a connection between his presence and the sudden attack. Sung emphasises the importance of evacuating residents while assigning Zack the critical task of safeguarding Hollander, who possesses crucial information. Cisne provides details on Hollander's location and instructs Zack to use the emergency elevator to reach Upper Junon. While making his way through the multiple levels of Junon, a soldier 3rd class urgently reports Hollander's escape from the detention center. Shocked by the news, Zack learns that Hollander exploited the chaos following the city attacks to break free. The soldier 3rd class suspects potential outside assistance in Hollander's escape. Zack, determined to prevent further chaos, inquires about Hollander's whereabouts. The 3rd class directs Zack to the 6th level, where security cameras identified Hollander. Zack receives a message as he runs along the causeway.
Simultaneous attacks. Consul. Zack, where are you? Soldier operatives are being sent out because we're getting attacked from all over the place. I'm on a chopper myself, on my way to an assignment. You were on vacation, weren't you? Did it get cut short? These recent attacks may spell real trouble for us. What's worse, the chain of command is in shambles since Director Lazard suddenly disappeared. Nobody seems to know where anyone is.
Continuing his pursuit, Zack spots Hollander emerging from the side street and immediately confronts him, demanding that he stops. Hollander swiftly turns and attempts to flee. Zack gives chase, but his instincts kick in, sensing an approaching threat. A G-blader takes aim with a gunblade, and Zack adeptly blocks the bullets with his Buster Sword. Expressing frustration at the interruption, Zack easily dispatches the threat. Proceeding further, Zack reaches the switch to open the gate to the central tunnel. After hitting the switch, Zack enters and discovers Hollander at the tunnel's end. Hollander triggers a switch that causes a tank to emerge. Now I'm going to spoil a plot point that is found out later on in the story, but I'm going to do it now because it makes the story way easier to understand. And I really do think that the game doesn't do a very good job at conveying this plot point to the player. The person who helped Hollander escape was the director of Soldier. Lazard was born in the Midgar slums to an unnamed woman and secretly to the president of Shinra. Despite growing up in poverty and being raised by his mother, Lazard landed a job at Shinra and swiftly climbed the ranks. While he carried out his duties, his resentment towards Shinra for mistreating his mother led him to finance Hollander's research using embezzled funds. All of this is never explicitly explained, but you can figure it out by reading Zack's emails and speaking with NPCs. Zack ultimately emerges victorious, causing the tank to collapse into ruins. Zack stylishly sheaves his weapon, just as Sung, accompanied by two Soldier's third-class members, enters through the opened gate. Sung updates Zack on their progress in containing the enemies and proposes securing the area further by locking the door. Acknowledging his failure to apprehend Hollander, Zack expresses his intention to continue the pursuit. Zack reaches the freight elevator where he ascends to the top. Upon reaching the summit, a guard Scorpion confronts Zack, who promptly draws his sword. A battle ensues, culminating in Zack's victory over the mechanized adversary. Zack sheaves his sword and redirects his attention towards the airport, convinced that Hollander is in that direction. Continuing the pursuit, Zack trails Hollander to the runway's edge. Hollander gazes over the precipice, staring at the vast ocean below. With a smirk, Hollander steps off the edge, seemingly falling to his death.
Hey! What is he?
However, two Genesis copies swiftly rescue him, leaving Zack bewildered. Sung, Cisne, and Sephiroth catch up, the latter revealing the worldwide resurgence of Genesis copies.
That can't be. We wiped out those Genesis copies.
Did Genesis really die? They've been sighted in Midgar as well.
I see.
The slums, too. Permission to return. Granted.
Yeah.
Take care.
You too. Hey, what's going on in Modeoheim?
The device Hollander was using has been stolen.
Genesis?
Probably. We'll meet again soon.
I'll hold you to that.
Genesis is standing atop the Junon cannon, holding a dumb apple and reciting some more Loveless. He is just so insufferable. I cannot stand this guy. Genesis is very much a symptom of essentially being filler in a really weird sort of way. Because there is no trace of him in the original Final Fantasy, he can't have too much of an impact on the universe as a whole. Because then you run into the issue where it makes the audience question why he has never been mentioned at all in any subsequent installments. Angeal also suffers from this, but it is minimized to a certain degree because of his strong personal connection with Zack. Genesis definitely does feel a bit like a third wheel when it comes to the narrative. In the midst of Midgar's Sector 5 slums, Zack rushes towards the church entrance, abruptly halting as he senses some sort of presence following him. He turns around, wondering whether it was a mere figment of his imagination. As he enters the church, a machine begins trailing him. Inside the church, Zack discovers a creature with white wings beside Aerith. Urging caution, Zack approaches the creature, revealing it to be an Angeal copy. Just as they assess the situation, a shielded gunball head appears behind Zack, its turret scanning between them. The Angeal copy lunges towards the threat, exploding upon impact as Zack shields Aerith. Grateful for the intervention, Zack acknowledges the creature's protective intent. Wondering if Angeal might be present as well, they observe the copy's gradual degradation. Moved by the creature's plight, Aerith expresses sympathy for the creature. The copy, rising again, ascends to the pillars above the church.
Can you hear me? Stay right where you are!
I'll take care of things.
So, that flower wagon. Let's do it.
Zack tells Aerith to wait in the church while he goes and gathers the materials for the flower wagon.
Now you behave yourself.
Emerging from the church, Zack encounters 3 gunball heads rolling towards the entrance. After dismantling the gunball heads, Zack notices that one of the machines is malfunctioning. Sung approaches, shedding light on these new weapons. They were designed by the ARMS development to detect and eliminate Genesis copies in Midgar. Zack, impressed by their capabilities, questions the lack of discrimination between soldier operatives and monsters. Sung acknowledges the flaw, assuring that it will be rectified. Zack then confronts Sung about his surveillance of Aerith, accusing Sung of spying. Zack receives the Turk's signature silent treatment. Undeterred, Zack expresses his frustration, emphasizing his commitment to protecting Aerith. The discussion is abruptly interrupted by the boy who stole Zack's wallet earlier, excitedly addressing Zack as Mr. Soldier. The boy mentions rumors of the flower wagon project for Aerith. Sung dismissively walks away, leaving Zack to clarify that the project is for Aerith's protection rather than a romantic gesture, even though it is clearly for romantic reasons. I always thought it was kind of strange how Zack is a bit bashful about his relationship, but then I remember that during this time, he is still only a teenager. He just comes across as a guy in his early 20s to me. I think that's because he's tall. I don't know. This part is basically just a fetch quest. We have to explore all around Midgar and gather the right materials in order to build the flower wagon. It gives the player a bit of a breather and gives space to be able to contemplate all the stuff that is going on in the plot. It's kind of the calm before the storm. When searching around Midgar, Zack receives a couple of messages.
Falling apart. Consul. Those copies Hollander made that attacked Shinra. Did you know that Director Lazard financed Hollander with the money he embezzled from the company? Seems revenge against the company was the motivation for both of them. I can understand Hollander wanting revenge, but why would Lazard? He climbed up the ladder while he was still young, and he was always a decent guy. What could he have had against the company? I do remember him writing about ill blood in one of his mails. Speaking of climbing up, the president's son already made vice president. You think Lazard was after the VP's chair?
Investigation reveals Shinra's lies. Reporter. It seems that Soldier Director Lazard, who was recently reported as killed in action, simply vanished instead. Sources say Lazard has been embezzling company money to fund Hollander's attack on Shinra. It is also believed that Hollander, who was held captive in Janan, has fled with Lazard's aid. An investigation has revealed that both men have held ill feelings toward Shinra. This comes as a great shock to the parties involved, as members of Soldier have had the utmost confidence in Lazard. More at 8 Pop.
Returning with all the materials, Zack is warmly greeted by Aerith, and together they begin constructing the flower wagon.
Wow, it looks really good. The materials are matching perfectly.
Upon completion, Aerith evaluates the wagon and expresses a hint of disappointment. Zack, ever the optimist, playfully dismisses Aerith's perfectionism.
I want the nicer one.
Stop being so picky.
A tiny little wish. That's all.
They're tiny, but you have lots, right?
That's right. Want to hear?
How many you got?
23?
Write them down, so I don't forget.
Before they can delve deeper into their conversation, Zack's phone rings, interrupting the moment. The call is from Sephiroth, revealing new developments that require Zack's immediate attention at headquarters.
Here.
Within the confines of the director's office, a large monitor displays a world map marked with various Mako reactor sites. Sephiroth addresses Zack about a concerning situation. Monsters have swarmed near a regional Mako reactor, causing the disappearances of both workers and soldier operatives. The company deems the matter serious enough to dispatch 2 first-class soldiers to investigate. Sephiroth informs them that the missing operatives who were tracking Lazard have reported a peculiar pod-like device in the area, likely the same one stolen in Modiaheim. Sephiroth directs Zack to gather the rest of the men on the soldier floor before they disembark for the investigation. Before heading out on the mission, Zack decides to go visit Aerith, as he might be gone for a while. On the way to the train station, Zack receives some news from Shinra.
Analysis of the simultaneous attacks. Shinra News. We have determined that the simultaneous attacks on 5 locations, including Jinan and Costa del Sol, were the criminal acts of an anti-Shinra organization. Their goal was to release a group of their own activists in Shinra captivity and display a show of force. But thanks to a quick response by soldier operatives, the situation was quickly brought under control. Even in Jinan, the target of the heaviest attacks, damage was kept to a minimum.
Heading to the Sector 5 slums church, Zack walks towards Aerith, who is diligently tending to the flowers. As he approaches, she stands up to greet him, inquiring if he is finished with work. Zack reveals an important assignment that requires him to leave Midgar for a while, leaving Aerith curious about his return date. He assures her that she can call him and expresses confidence that the job will be a breeze. Eager to make the most of their time together, Aerith suggests that they start filling the slums with flowers. In the slums playground, she wheels out a cute little flower wagon. You are actually able to make better flower wagons for Aerith, if you can be bothered to do some more fetch quests. Obviously I couldn't be bothered. As time passes without any customers, Aerith wonders if the lack of interest is due to the wagon's appearance. Undeterred, Zack reassures her, but his optimism fades as he notices a potential customer leaving. Determined to make a sale, Zack tries to engage in negotiations with a passerby. However, his efforts are in vain. Despite the setbacks, Aerith remains in high spirits, finding joy in their time together. Out of the corner of his eye, Zack notices Sung observing them from a distance.
Don't worry about Aerith. Protecting the subject is part of the surveillance.
You're the only one I can depend on. Hey, why are you laughing? I'm counting on you.
Back on the soldier floor, Zack inquires about the group's status. Cloud, recognizing the urgency, informs Zack about the difficulty in gathering the team. Suddenly realizing that it's Cloud, Zack enthusiastically acknowledges their reunion, and they exchange a fist pump. Cloud assures Zack that he will gather everyone and swiftly departs. Zack watches with a smile as Cloud hurries off. Later, Zack, Cloud, and 2 other infantrymen line up as Sephiroth approaches. Zack asks as to where they are even going.
To Nibelheim.
At the entrance to Nibelheim, Sephiroth addresses Cloud, who dons a helmet, inquiring about the emotions of returning home after an extended absence. Intrigued, Zack raises the topic of family, leading Sephiroth to disclose that his mother's name is Genova, revealing she died shortly after his birth. Amid a bout of laughter and a dismissive gesture, Sephiroth abruptly shifts the conversation, urging them to proceed into town. As Sephiroth and the 2 infantrymen venture into Nibelheim, Zack ponders the revelation about Genova being Sephiroth's mother. As Sephiroth walks towards an inn, Tifa approaches, inquiring if he is one of the soldiers sent to investigate the reactor. I've never understood why Tifa was dressed as a cowgirl. Was that the fashion in Japan in the late 90s? Zack proudly introduces himself as a member of Soldier, emphasizing his status as first class. Tifa responds with a nonchalant huh. Tifa, curious about the rarity of Soldier first classes, learns that only 2, Zack and Sephiroth, are here. Puzzled, Tifa attempts to say something, but eventually runs off without uttering a word. Zack, finding her behavior peculiar, labels her as a weird girl, a weird cowgirl. Nibelheim is another section where you are quite free to explore around. There are quite a few side quests that you can tackle if you want. These missions help to flesh out a bit of the lore of this area, but you aren't missing out on too much if you choose to skip them. The most important building in town is the Shinra Manor. Located on the outskirts of Nibelheim, it was the first structure built years before the town was established, and it holds many secrets, many dark and pretty messed up secrets. At the inn's entrance, Sephiroth addresses the group, proclaiming their departure for the reactor at dawn and advising everyone to rest well. Emphasizing that only one person needs to keep watch, he grants permission for anyone to visit family and friends. Zack questions why Cloud won't take off his helmet. Cloud cryptically deems it personal, leading Zack to playfully brand him a weirdo. Lots of weirdos going around here. Just as Zack enters the inn, he receives a message from Cloud.
Oh, I'm supposed to do Cloud too? I can't do Cloud. Wanted to tell you. We've been on a few missions together, and there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I was thinking about telling you once we were in my hometown, but it's a little embarrassing, so I'm gonna write it out and send it to you. The day you changed your hair, when you wished us rookies good luck before our sortie, I'll never forget your words. Remembering what you said that day gives me the courage to stay strong, so thanks, Zack.
Upon reaching the second floor of the inn, Zack spots Sephiroth, who is gazing out a window. Curious, Zack inquires about the captivating view, prompting Sephiroth to express a sense of familiarity with the town, feeling like he has seen it before. The following day, the group, along with a photographer, assemble outside Shinra Manor. Tifa will be acting as their guide around Nibelheim. The photographer readies his camera, capturing moments as they make their way to the Mako reactor.
When they talk about the best guide in town, they're talking about me.
It's too dangerous. There's no way I can let you get involved in this.
She'll be just fine if you protect her.
Stay back. It's just unconscious. Or do you actually want to get eaten? Use brings wear, tear, and rust. That's why I use the blunt side.
At the Mount Nebel reactor entrance, Zack and Sephiroth prepare to enter the facility. Tifa expresses her desire to go inside, but Sephiroth, declaring it a top secret facility, prohibits non-Shinra personnel from entering, assigning an infantryman to keep Tifa safe. Sephiroth and Zack venture inside, leaving an irate Tifa waiting outside.
Stop!
Within the reactor, Zack ascends the stairs and discovers a door with the name Genova written above it. Near one of the pods, Sephiroth and Zack witness a grotesque monster inside. Sephiroth explains that these creatures, born of Mako energy, are the result of experiments conducted by the Shinra scientist Hojo. Sephiroth is hit by a sudden headache. Concerned about his origins, Sephiroth questions if he was created similarly to the monstrous creatures spawned by Mako energy. As the monster falls lifeless from the pod, Genesis appears.
Am I a human being?
No such luck. You are a monster. Sephiroth. You were the greatest monster created by the Genova Project.
Genesis! So you are alive!
I suppose I am, if you can call this living.
What is the Genova Project?
The Genova Project was the term used for all experiments relating to the use of Genova's cells.
My mother's cells?
Poor little Sephiroth. You've never actually met your mother. You've only been told her name, no? I don't know what images you've conjured up in your head, but...
Genesis! No!
Genova was excavated from a 2,000-year-old rock layer. She's a monster. Sephiroth, I need your help. My body is continuing to degrade. Soldier First Class, Sephiroth. Genova Project G gave birth to Angeal and monsters like myself. Genova Project S
S?
Used the remains of countless failed experiments to create a perfect monster.
What do you want of me?
Your traits cannot be copied onto others. Your genes can't be diffused. Therefore, your body cannot degrade. Share your cells with me. My friend, your desire is the bringer of life, the gift of the goddess.
Whether your words are lies created to deceive me, or the truth that I have sought all my life, it makes no difference. You will rot.
As Genesis departs, Zack, injured and trying to stand up, urges him to stop, and a dumb apple remains on the stairwell. And this is the inciting incident of Sephiroth's unraveling. Crisis Core highlights a more human side of Sephiroth, shedding light on his friendships and tragic backstory. It successfully avoids making him just a foil for Cloud, allowing him to stand out as his own character. However, this portrayal does diminish his mystique, unlike in the original, where the enigmatic build-up and the delayed revelation of his past were quite impactful. Yet, I think this version of Sephiroth aligns better with the narrative's intentions. Zack rushes outside the reactor, encountering a Genesis copy that shoots down Cloud. In an attempt to fight back, Tifa engages the enemy while Zack prepares his sword and runs towards the fight, and quickly eliminates the attackers. Tifa, checking on the injured infantryman, reveals he tried to protect her. Zack consoles her, urging her to stay close. They descend Mount Nebel together, and upon returning to Nibelheim, Zack wonders about Sephiroth's whereabouts. Tifa offers to ask around, leaving Zack with the wounded infantryman.
Tifa's safe. Don't worry.
If only I were a soldier. Zack?
Soldier is like a den of monsters. Don't go inside.
What happened?
I don't know, man. I thought I knew, but... By the way, do you know Tifa?
Sort of.
Talk to her?
No.
I'm sensing some issues here. Shouldn't you do something? I'm one to talk. I'm with soldiers, so fighting's all I do. Sorting things out is someone else's job. What's going on? Who's the enemy? It makes no difference to me!
The following day, Zack awakens and has a brief conversation with Cloud, who expresses a desire for more rest. As Zack heads to the first floor, Tifa rushes in with crucial information. Sephiroth is at the Shinra Manor. Following Tifa's lead, an infantryman runs towards the manor, and Zack follows suit. Walking through Nibelheim, Zack receives a phone call from Aerith. The conversation is brief and discreet, with Zack reassuring her that he'll visit soon.
I'll be here.
I'll see you. I promise.
Energized after the call, he catches up with the infantryman, who turns out to be Cloud. On the way to the manor, Zack receives a message.
A message for you, Consul. Working hard at your assignment, I assume. I guess it was longer than we thought it would be. I thought I'd look after Aerith while you were gone, but the Turks already are there guarding her. I don't know why. Anyway, she says the tire came off her flower wagon, and now the thing's useless. Ooh, whoops, too much beer. Anyway, she says the tire came off her flower wagon, and now the thing's useless. I offered to fix it for her, but she refused. She's waiting for you to come back and fix it, so hurry up and get back here already.
The Genova project began at Shinra Manor. Two scientists, Professor Hojo and Dr. Hollander, began competing branches of the project to produce humans with abilities of the creature Genova, whom they believed was an ancient. Hojo's plan included injecting Genova's cells directly into the fetus of his child, creating the hero Sephiroth. Did I mention that Hojo is a fucking degenerate? Hollander, as we have learned throughout the game, ended up creating Angeal and Genesis. While in Nibelheim, Zack gets a few messages from Cloud and Tifa that shed a bit of light on their relationship.
If you'd like, do you want to come over to my house? I want you to try Mom's cooking. The thing is, I haven't been home yet since I've been here. I hadn't been able to make up my mind about it, but I decided that I should show my face. But going home alone is a bit uncomfortable, so I was hoping you could join me. Is he alright? Tifa, is that guy alright? I'm a little worried, because it looked like he got hurt pretty bad. I'm glad you were there. Thank you, Zack. I had heard of Soldier and how tough they are. I hope we can talk a little bit more about Soldier one of these days, because there's something I want to ask you. Sephiroth, I don't get him at all. Is everyone in Soldier like him? Oh, and are there any blonde guys in Soldier? It's just a dream. Any girl would love to have a blonde soldier guy protect her when she's in a pinch. Well, it's no good just waiting for my blonde knight in shining armor to show up. So I've started learning how to fight myself. My teacher tells me I've got a knack for it. Don't tell anyone. Tifa, I almost forgot. Please don't tell anyone in Soldier that I asked about the blonde guy. Okay?
Cloud and Tifa grew up together in Nibelheim. Tifa was quite popular with the other kids in town, while Cloud kept to himself. When Tifa's mother passed away, she believed climbing Mount Nibel would bring her back. However, during the climb, she got hurt and fell into a coma. Cloud, having followed her to make sure she was alright, got blamed for the accident and was forbidden from going near Tifa. Cloud admired Sephiroth and wanted to become a first-class soldier like him, to win Tifa's heart. And before leaving for Midgar, Cloud promised to protect Tifa. However, now that Cloud has returned without making Soldier, he is too ashamed to show his face and keeps his helmet on whenever he is around Tifa. I genuinely feel bad for the guy. It sucks to work so hard for something just to come up short, and what makes it worse is that Tifa probably wouldn't even care that he isn't a soldier. Upon reaching the first floor of Shinra Manor, Cloud points Zack to the stairs. As Cloud rushes upstairs, Zack follows suit. In the room on the right, Cloud explains that something is amiss with Sephiroth and that he may have entered the underground passage. Descending into the Shinra Manor's underground cave, Zack faces a crypt and attempts to open a coffin, and inside he finds a man sleeping, but he doesn't wake him up because he is a courteous gentleman. I'm sure he'll be fine. Proceeding further into the basement, Zack discovers Sephiroth engrossed in documents about the Genova project.
A life form. A state of suspended animation, excavated from a 2,000-year-old stratum. Professor Gast named this life form Genova. Date redacted. Genova verified as an ancient.
Which we learn from Hojo is not true. Genova is in fact not an ancient but an alien creature. However, that is a story for another game.
Date redacted. Genova project approved. Mako Reactor 1 authorized for use.
After a somber encounter with Sephiroth, he then requests to be left alone. From that day, Sephiroth shut himself inside Shinra Manor and proceeded to review document after document, like a man possessed. The lights in the basement never went out, and on the 7th day, Zack exits the inn. He is met with a shocking sight of the entire town engulfed in flames. Zack finds Cloud face down on the ground, and Zack hears a mutter about Sephiroth. Proceeding further, Zack encounters Sephiroth, who, unfazed by the surrounding fire, ominously declares,
"Yes, I'm coming for you."
Sephiroth walks through the flames towards the Mako reactor. Determined, Zack runs towards Mount Nibel, casting one last glance at the town ablaze with fire.
How could you? Sephiroth, how could you?
Where are you? Where are you? Sephiroth set the whole village on fire. Tifa and her dad went chasing after him. You've got to stop them.
Zack rushes into the Nebel reactor. Inside he discovers Tifa lying injured on the ground, a victim of Sephiroth's attack. Zack attempts to help her, but she recoils from him, expressing hatred towards Shinra and Soldier. Despite her resentment, Zack ascends the stairs towards Sephiroth, casting one last look at Tifa. In the chamber where Jenova resides, Sephiroth speaks to his perceived mother, expressing a desire to reclaim the planet together. Zack confronts Sephiroth about the town's massacre and Tifa's injuries, but Sephiroth remains cryptic, laughing and continuing his conversation with Jenova. Sephiroth then tears away the machine host in front of Jenova.
We meet at last, Mother.
As Zack confronts Sephiroth, holding his blade to his neck, Sephiroth has betrayed the trust Zack had in him and slashing him back with his own blade. In the ensuing battle, Zack falls into the reactor's core, landing on a glass platform where he faces off against Sephiroth. Crisis Core did a great job at solidifying Zack as a character. It's easy to forget, but before Crisis Core, Zack didn't really have that much of a character. We only ever got small glimpses of him and second-hand accounts of who he was, and only after playing Crisis Core can you fully understand why Zack has such an impact on the other characters of Final Fantasy VII. He's competent, reliable, charismatic, he is just a really great guy. I'm so glad that they didn't make him a dark and brooding character that had become a bit of a reoccurring thing in the FF7 compilation, with a lot of the light-hearted fun being drained from the series. After Angeal's death, Zack takes it pretty hard, but it also triggers a transformation within him. With his mentor gone, it is now up to him to step up. By taking ownership of the Buster Sword, he not only becomes a symbol of hope for his comrades, but also learns to carry the weight of Angeal's legacy with grace and determination. The pressure on him intensifies as the story progresses, but despite the challenges he faces, Zack remains steadfast in his mission to protect those he cares about and honour Angeal's memory. Exhausted, Zack refuses to give up, expressing disbelief that Sephiroth has become someone unrecognisable. Sephiroth, claiming to be the Chosen One, unleashes powerful magic towards Zack, shattering the glass platform. The battle intensifies, with Sephiroth aiming to knock Zack into the core below. Sephiroth swiftly charges in, slashing Zack and shearing off some of his hair as he evades the attack. Zack retaliates, leaping into Jenova's chamber. The clash continues, but Sephiroth gains the upper hand, hurling Zack onto the Mako chamber stairs, while his blade lands at the entrance to Jenova's chamber.
Dare you?
Cloud! Finish Sephiroth off! Sephiroth!
Don't test me. No. Impossible. impossible.
As Zack struggles to get up, he witnesses Cloud stumbling out of the chamber. Cloud collapses at the top of the stairs, and Zack, reaching out, acknowledges Cloud's success before losing consciousness.
Cloud. You did it.
Later, Zack awakens to find Professor Hojo and a Shinra infantryman examining him. Hojo, intrigued by Cloud, plans to use him as a test subject, laughing maniacally as Zack fades once again into unconsciousness.
You call yourself soldier? You tarnish the soldier name.
Angeal! Wait!
Those wings. I want them too.
A scientist enters the basement to discover Zack collapsed outside the shattered test chamber, radiating with Mako energy. Zack gets up and knocks out the scientist.
Nice cock.
Zack approaches Cloud's chamber, releasing the liquid and opening the door. Unconscious, Cloud falls into Zack's arms. Placing Cloud gently on the ground, Zack tries to engage in conversation with him, but is only semi-conscious. The researcher lies unconscious nearby. Upon examining him, Zack obtains a dresser key, which can be missed, and you will have to return back to this room if you forget to grab it, which I definitely did not do. Zack finds some documents in the laboratory that gives some clues as to what the researcher was up to.
Failed Case 1. Soldier First Class. Desired effect did not occur. Strong tolerance to Genova cells due to soldier conditioning. Assessed as cause. Failed Case 2. Shinra Infantrymen. Weak tolerance to Genova cells led to toxicosis. Lack of response to outside stimuli suggests severe system damage. Recovery is highly unlikely. Document 2. Researcher's Diary 1. Here I am, banished to this remote country town. I came all excited about participating in Professor Hojo's top secret experiment, but now they tell me the procedure's already ended. They won't even tell me what the procedure was. What am I doing here then? As long as I work under Hojo, there's a chance to move up, so I'll just have to be patient.
Zack gently lifts Cloud and makes his way towards the door. Zack carefully places Cloud on the ground nearby. He reassures Cloud, instructing him to wait a moment while he clears the path ahead. And this is a reoccurring scene within this chapter. Zack has to carry Cloud everywhere, as he is pretty much comatose at this point. This can be a bit tiring to watch, as you have to see Zack constantly picking up and putting down Cloud, but it really emphasizes just how grueling this journey is for these two. Another reoccurring thing in this chapter is Zack will be receiving a lot of messages through his phone, and for those who know, you know.
Personnel Announcement 0210 Shinra News. This is an official notification of the change in status for the following personnel. Sephiroth, Soldier First Class, killed in action. Zack Fair, Soldier First Class, killed in action. 2 infantrymen were also killed in action. Tell me they're lying, Consul. Got an announcement from General Affairs that you were killed in action. But those announcements are never true, are they? Where are you? What are you doing? What did you have to do for the company to reclassify yourself as a dead man? Let me help you if you're in a jam. Talk to me. I'll be waiting.
Zack carefully carries Cloud outside the gates of Shinra Manor, eventually reaching the town and resting him outside one of the houses. Surveying the town, Zack is puzzled by the apparent restoration of Nibelheim to its previous state. Suddenly, a Shinra infantryman rushes in, alerting to the breakout of the professor's test samples. As the infiltrators surround Zack, attempting to seize Cloud, he fights them off. Zack is essentially the antithesis of Cloud. Unlike Cloud, who struggles with self-doubt, Zack exudes confidence in his abilities as a skilled warrior. His unwavering hope and strong sense of purpose serve as a stark contrast to Cloud's initial lack of direction, and it's easy to see why Cloud looks up to him so much. And the lengths that Zack is willing to go through to get them out of here are truly admirable. Following the battle, Zack feels unusually lightheaded, questioning his unexpected struggle against the Shinra troops. Returning to Cloud, now resting by a water fountain, Zack contemplates the situation and decides to regroup at the manor. Carrying Cloud back towards Shinra Manor, Zack suggests resting until dark due to their weakened state. Later, Cloud lies on the bed in the manor's second floor. Zack examines him closely, pondering the possibility of Mako poisoning. Cloud's clothes are soaked in Mako, so Zack explores the manor in search for a change of clothes. While searching, Zack uncovers more documents left by the researcher.
Document 3, Researcher's Diary 2. The town was apparently set on fire intentionally. No one has filled me in on the details, but it seems that other researchers who came to town with Professor Hojo all perished in the fire. That's why I was sent here. Now, only Professor Hojo and I will be working on the project. What a thrill it is to actually witness one of Professor Hojo's experiments firsthand. Document 4, Researcher's Diary 3. The process of rebuilding the incinerated town has begun. The construction is somehow being overseen by the Turks. I would have thought that city planning would be in charge of that, but some ponytailed Turk has been coming around asking to speak to Professor Hojo, but he's routinely turned away. He refuses to say what he wants to see him about. Leave the professor be, Turk. He has important work to do. Document 5, Researcher's Diary 4. We finally released samples into the town. They walk all around town, but do not seem to want to leave it. Furthermore, 2 of them are still in their pods. Again, no explanation is provided to me. Could the procedure have failed? No, impossible. Professor Hojo's experiments don't fail. Document 6, Researcher's Diary. Shocking news. Professor Hojo is returning to the head office tomorrow. They say I'm the overall supervisor of the project now, but who am I supervising? I have no staff. Nobody has given me a timeline for when I get to go back either. Come on, let me go home. Document 7, Researcher's Diary 6. Every day I send reports regarding the status of the samples, but the samples never show signs of change, so there's nothing to report. The only joy I receive is in caring for the 2 failure cases. Now they understand me. I often tell them my troubles. Of course they don't reply, but, lately I've been thinking, caring for these samples isn't so bad. I think I'll just spend the rest of my days here.
Discovering a locked dresser, using the key taken from the researcher earlier, which I definitely did. Zack is able to find some clean clothes for Cloud. Despite the less than pleasant smell of the clothing, Zack emphasizes the need to be flexible, given the circumstances. Cloud now dons the same soldier uniform as Zack. Zack thinks that it suits him well. However, a sudden realization prompts Zack to retrieve a note from his pocket, leading him to recall a conversation with Aerith. The note contains Aerith's 23 tiny wishes, consolidated into a single desire.
I'd like to spend more time with you.
Hey, Cloud. I have to go to Midgar. You want to come with me?
Under the cover of nightfall in Nibelheim, lights illuminate every house as Zack carries an unconscious Cloud through the town. Sudden Shinra infiltrators appear on the scene. Zack gently places Cloud near a house and prepares for combat.
You can't fool me. Consul. Zack, where could you possibly be? Let me know if you're reading this. You've gone missing since your mission with Sephiroth. Do you have anything to do with Sephiroth being killed in action? I heard rumors about something going down in Nibelheim. Are you there right now?
With determination, Zack lifts Cloud, urging him to stay conscious. Together they exit the town, embarking on a journey down a road surrounded by vast plains. Frustration boils within Zack as he grapples with the seamlessly endless challenges they face. Finding a momentary respite, he gently places Cloud in a secluded area of the plain, instructing him to wait. Zack ventures onto the plains, his attention drawn to a sniper rifle lying on the ground and a gunball head positioned on a nearby hill. This minigame stands out as one of the more detailed ones. Sniper rifles are positioned along a path, allowing you to eliminate the distant gunballs. However, the aiming feels more akin to using a sniper rifle in Mass Effect 1 rather than a modern first-person shooter. It's somewhat disorientating. However, you can enhance the rifle by earning points as you take out the gunballs. While not outstanding, it provides a decent diversion, and at the very least, it allows you to savor the fantastic background music for a bit longer. I think Crisis Core might be my favourite video game soundtrack of all time, and that's not me being hyperbolic, I genuinely mean it. I've listened to the soundtrack so many times, there are just so many good tracks. Roaming in the Afternoon Sun is probably my favourite track. The composition perfectly captures a sense of adventure and exploration. Then there is The Soldier Way, with the beginning sounding like the marching of soldiers' feet on a battlefield before entering the chaos of a war zone. And then there is The Price of Freedom, which is just a beautiful piece of music. Each track captures the emotions and atmosphere of the game perfectly, helping to immerse you in the world. There is a great balance of somber and upbeat melodies, which perfectly melds with the tone of the game. But overall, I prefer the original versions, probably because of nostalgia if I'm being perfectly honest. Regardless, having more music to listen to while doing mundane tasks in my everyday life is definitely a welcomed addition. Zack is by the beach near a lighthouse, wondering about the next move. He's got Cloud to take care of, and thoughts about Angela are on his mind. Out of nowhere, Cissnei sneaks up on him. Zack greets her with a smile, but learns she's after the fugitive's sample, him. Despite Zack's plea for her to walk away, Cissnei, torn by duty, initiates a brief skirmish.
Step back. Next time, I'll really have to.
Returning to Cloud, Zack realizes the turrets are a problem. Resting until morning seems like the safest move. Suddenly, Cissnei reappears, revealing Cloud's status as another sample from Nibelheim.
He doesn't look well, Zack. Is he alright?
Mako poisoning. Severe case.
The experiments, isn't it?
Yeah.
Zack, initially defensive, learns about Cissnei's intentions to help them escape, receiving a set of keys as a parting gift. Zack speeds down a bridge on his bike, praising Shinra's engineering prowess. However, his excitement fades when he spots Genesis copies waiting on the bridge pillar. Quickly realizing trouble was brewing, he brakes, dismounts, and readies his sword to confront the approaching copies. Suddenly, Genesis kicks Zack in the back of the head, and the copies grab hold of him, much to Zack's protest. Caught in their grip, Zack winces as one copy tugs on his hair.
That's my hair!
You were a test subject in Hojo's new experiment. A modified version of Genova's power runs through you.
No way. He just ate my hair.
Your cells will be my gift of the goddess. The degradation will cease.
You are twisted.
The monster has been harvested and can be discarded.
You're the monster.
Legend shall speak of sacrifice at world's end. The wind sails over the water's surface, quietly, but surely.
Activating combat mode.
The transformed copy engages Zack in a fierce battle. At this point in the game, I have reached the damage limit with magic. The only way to break the damage limit is by equipping special accessories that can only be obtained in high level missions, and you will want to do this if you are wanting to fight the super boss. Despite the struggle, Zack triumphs over the creature, pondering his next move as Mako energy seeps from the defeated monster. Continuing his journey on the bike through a desolate mountain range, Zack suddenly recognizes his hometown, Gongaga. He stops the bike and begins to walk towards the town, contemplating the risk of checking in on his parents.
Just as I thought, Kunzel. I hear 2 research samples have escaped from Nibelheim, and you might be one of them, Zack. If you are, watch your back, because now a whole battalion of infantrymen has been called in. They're coming after you in crazy numbers. Man, what the hell did you do to deserve this? I don't care if you've made an enemy out of Shinra. I'll always be waiting for you to come back. Just make it back alive, buddy. Promise me.
Strolling through Gongaga's town entrance, Zack is caught off guard when Cissnei chides him for being predictable. Zack is unfazed, but Cissnei warns of heightened security due to another target, Angeal, being seen in the area. Cissnei grants him 10 minutes before returning to the Turks, not wanting to be responsible for bringing bad news to Zack's parents. Zack, despite his urgency, requests Cissnei to keep his folks company.
Alright. No problem.
They'll probably ask you to join the family.
Already happened.
What did you say? Cissnei!
Not my real name.
Huh?
You have 5 minutes left.
As Cissnei walks away, a faint white wing catches his attention in the distance. Convinced it's Angeal, Zack begins chasing after him, heading towards the hills and a cliff edge. Zack encounters the white winged figure, only to face off against Genesis copies. Hollander, nearly degraded, and Genesis himself appear, revealing Hollander's desperate attempt to survive using Genesis's cells. The two mention the importance of pure S cells carried by an infantryman, Cloud.
That infantryman carries within his body the last pure S cells in the world.
Hey!
Do you know the verse in Act 4 that leads into the final act?
Of course not.
The greatest mystery behind the gift of the goddess? The life stream.
What?
There are various theories regarding the missing final act. However, only my theory is correct, and I will prove it to you.
No, that won't be necessary. Ah! Oh!
You will understand.
Realizing they are after Cloud, Zack races back down the hill, and it is on the way back where we have the worst implementation of a minigame ever. When passing the waterfall, Zack will hear a banging sound and can choose to investigate the sound. So yes, it is optional and I would highly recommend skipping it, but that does not take away from the fact that the developers did place it here. And it's not that the minigame itself is that atrocious, even though it is pretty bad, it's that it completely ruins the pacing if you choose to play it. I mean, Zack is in a hurry, he needs to get to Cloud before Hollander, and then the game allows you to fuck around in a waterfall for a couple of minutes. What the hell were they thinking placing this here? We do not need variety at this point in the story. I'm already invested in what is going on. You do not need to try and placate me. I am already all in, okay? Feeling a growing concern for Cloud's well-being, Zack acknowledges the urgency and sets off towards Gongaga's outskirts, eventually leading him to the abandoned Mako reactor. Hollander is approaching Cloud with copies in tow. Suddenly, Angeal swoops down, attacking the copies. However, Hollander, seizing the opportunity to knock Angeal down as the copies close in, Hollander attempts to escape, but Zack chases after him. As a Genesis copy, Hollander's body is considered too weak to manifest Genesis's powers properly, resulting in a smaller black wing and accelerating the degradation inherited from Genesis to a grotesque state. He shows limited combat abilities such as swinging his satchel or breathing deadly breath. As Hollander begins to collapse, his body disintegrates and Marco energy seeps out. Zack sheathes his blade and rushes back to Cloud. Approaching Angeal, who is lying near the motorbike, Zack playfully tosses a dumb apple in his hand. Angeal greets him, revealing that he is just an Angeal copy, not as formidable as the original.
It's Lazard.
He confessed to aiding Hollander's escape from Junon as part of his revenge plan, but becoming an Angeal copy was beyond his expectations. As a copy, his lifelong thirst for revenge faded away, and replaced by a newfound desire to assist Zack rescue Genesis and ultimately save the world. I clarified this plot point earlier in the video because even in this scene where it's meant to be a significant revelation, Lazard doesn't explain why he seeks revenge. The betrayal in this scene might suggest that he wanted revenge for being made into an Angeal copy, but that doesn't make sense because it's not what he means, but it's how it comes across. Lazard reveals Genesis's pursuit of the gift of the goddess and emphasizes the need to stop him. Confused by Genesis's cryptic words, Zack seeks guidance. Lazard asks about Zack's dreams, and Zack, with a light-hearted tone, expresses his aspirations to become a hero.
To become a hero.
Unattainable dreams are the best kind.
Oh, come on. Lend me a hand. You and Angeal both. If we pull this off, we'll all be heroes. At the very least, I feel like one.
So, Zack, where is Genesis?
Zack presents the dumb apple as a clue to Genesis's whereabouts. As Zack shows the fruit to Lazard, a single white feather falls from Lazard's wing.
Dumb apples only grow in Benora.
Why is that?
Something to do with the soil here, apparently.
Genesis always carried a dumb apple with him. I should have realized sooner.
Zack is shocked by the drastic change in Benora after the airstrike, now radiating energy from the live stream. Zack requests Lazard to look after Cloud. As Zack gazes beyond the cliffs, he notices a peculiar energy source in the distance and starts to move towards it. Zack encounters a large hole, emanating a radiant glow. Zack decides to enter, finding himself in a cavern with a hidden space adorned with a desk featuring trophies, photos, cans, sheets, and a book. Intrigued, Zack picks up the book and begins flipping through its pages.
Benora white juice. First prize processed foods. National Agriculture Awards. Oh, wow. The idea for this juice came from a Benora youth named Genesis. Wow. Just wow. Young Genesis's comments. I am very honored. Benora white juice tastes great, but the fruit itself is tasty too. My dream is for my parents and I to serve the hero Sephiroth our apples one day.
Hearing a far-off monster's growls, Zack looks around and sets aside the book, with a pressing question lingering on his mind. Can he do something to save Genesis? Zack then takes the stairs leading to the depths of judgment. In the depths, we finally get access to the complete Loveless poem, with each act inscribed on stone slabs.
Loveless. When the war of the beasts brings about the world's end, the goddess descends from the sky. Wings of light and dark spread afar. She guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. Act 1. Infinite in mystery is the gift of the goddess. We seek it thus and take to the sky. Ripples form on the water's surface. The wandering soul knows no rest. 3 friends go into battle. One is captured, one flies away. The one that is left becomes a hero. Act 2. Dreams of the morrow hath the shattered soul. Pride is lost. Wings stripped away, the end is nigh. There is no hate, only joy. For you are beloved by the goddess. Hero of the dawn, healer of worlds. Act 3. My friend, Do you fly away now, to a world that abhors you and I? All that awaits you is a somber morrow, no matter where the winds may blow. My soul, corrupted by vengeance, hath endured torment to find the end of the journey in my own salvation and your eternal slumber. Act 4. My friend, the fates are cruel. There are no dreams, no honor remains. The arrow has left the bow of the goddess. My friend, your desire is the bringer of life, the gift of the goddess. Legends shall speak of sacrifice at world's end. The wind sails over the water's surface, quietly but surely.
However, the final act is notably missing. Does having the full poem make it easier to understand? Not really. As mentioned earlier, I'm not a fan of the Loveless motif. In the game's universe, Loveless is a stage play about 3 friends and their love, much longer than what we see in game, making it even more obscure. The known content of Loveless revolves around a theme of salvation, particularly through Jenova, as interpreted by Genesis. However, this salvation is ambiguous, acknowledged by Genesis when he admits that the gift of the goddess is a mystery even to him. To me, it appears more like a prophecy or a retelling of how Jenova arrived on the planet and attempted to destroy it. The destruction of the planet and everything on it seems like a distorted form of salvation, which is most evident in the prologue. When the War of the Beasts brings about the world's end, the goddess descends from the sky. Wings of light and dark spread afar. She guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. If you're familiar with other Final Fantasy games, this concept isn't too far-fetched, as the idea of a deity or a powerful antagonist choosing to destroy everything in the name of salvation is a reoccurring theme in the series. Zack heads to the portal of Severance, where there is a machine with 7 materia slots. Each slot represents a part of the goddess, and after pressing a button on the console, a voice instructs Zack to present the goddess materia. The materia can be found throughout the depths, and they really aren't all that hard to find. Once you've found all 7, you bring them back to this pedestal. Zack sets the goddess materia, triggering the console to light up and the barrier to break. A monstrous Genesis copy was lying in wait behind the door, and launched itself at Zack, but after everything Zack has been through, it proves to be no match for the former Soldier First Class. The defeated monster collapses and disappears. Approaching the light, Zack senses that Genesis is waiting ahead. Inside the light lies a giant orb of materia, suspended by tree branches, with a goddess statue in front of it. Genesis, reciting passages from Loveless, acknowledges Zack's arrival and reveals his intention to join the life stream. As light emanates from the materia, Zack questions its nature. Genesis cryptically describes it as the gift of the goddess, found only in Benora. Genesis hints at the various interpretations of the gift and the mystery surrounding it. Genesis then absorbs the materia's power, undergoing a monstrous transformation into a giant weapon with an enlarged sword fueled by life stream energy. When Genesis learned he would not be able to cure his degradation with Hollander, Genesis aimed to recreate scenes from Loveless to get the gift of the goddess.
You have succeeded, Angeal's spirit, and carry a part of Sephiroth within you. Thus, the 3 friends are reunited once again, and Loveless is reenacted.
He has set up the fight against Zack, with himself as the hero, Zack as the prisoner, the goddess statue as the goddess, and the red materia as the gift of the goddess. But as the fight rages on, Genesis eventually comes to the realization that he is not the hero of the story after all. Genesis's sword is sent flying through the air after Zack's powerful blow, knocking him off his feet and into the life stream. The fruit at the goddess's statue begins to emit a radiant glow as Genesis approaches it. Minerva, the planet's guardian, appears before Genesis. He extends his arms in a gesture of acceptance, but she closes her eyes, triggering the life stream to drag him below. Minerva is also the game's super boss. It's not really made that clear in the story, but Minerva plays a similar role to the weapons of the original Final Fantasy. Maybe. As the goddess statue is sliced in half, Genesis collapses on the ground, and his sword lands behind him. Zack, resilient, lifts Genesis and carries him away, briefly pausing to glance at the damaged statue. Beneath the dumb apple tree, Cloud sits in a catatonic state on a chair, with Lizard leaning on the side. Zack places Genesis next to Cloud and checks on Lizard, who reveals that Shinra attacked them.
I got some help from him over there.
It's you.
Director!
Thank you.
Picking a dumb apple from the tree, Zack places one in Genesis's lap, another in Cloud's hand, and keeps one for himself. As they prepare to eat, Zack is surprised when Genesis, previously unconscious, asks if the apple is good. As Lizard's body dissipates into the live stream, leaving behind white feathers, the Angel copy also fades away, leaving a small note that Zack picks up.
How are you? I wish I knew where you were. It's already been 4 years now. This is the 89th letter that I've sent to you, but I don't even know where to send them anymore. I really hope that this final letter that I'm writing gets to you. By the way, the flowers are selling very well. They make everyone so happy. Thanks to you, Zack. Aerith.
4 years?
What do you mean, final?
Aerith. Wait for me.
Later that day, a Shinra helicopter descends upon Benor, carrying 2 mysterious characters that are from a different Final Fantasy game that I will be doing a video on later on. Anyway, they retrieve Genesis, placing him in the helicopter, which takes off, leaving behind Genesis's copy of Loveless. The poetic verse of Loveless unfolds as the live stream completes its final act.
To become the dew that quenches the land, to spare the sands, the seas, the skies, I offer thee this silent sacrifice.
Meanwhile, Cisne boards a chopper atop Shinra HQ, receiving orders from Sung to locate Zack and Cloud before the army does. Sung emphasizes the importance of saving Zack's life, as he has letters for him, 88 of them. On the road, Zack is hitchhiking on a truck, joking with Cloud. A plot hole jolts the truck, but Cloud remains unresponsive. In another part of the wastelands outside Midgar, the Turks, Reno and Rude, are having no luck in finding the 2 fugitives. They receive a communication from Cisne, assigning a different location for them to search. As Reno flies the helicopter, Zack and Cloud come across an ambush. After instructing the truck driver to leave them near some rocks, Zack shields Cloud. After ensuring Cloud's safety, Zack leaves to face the Shinra army.
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep. Embrace your dreams. And, whatever happens, protect your honor.
As soldier! Come and get it!
Activating combat mode.
The way this final stand unfolds is absolutely fantastic. Zack has been worn down by all of the hardships that Cloud and he have endured in order to reach this point. Zack has reached his physical and mental breaking point. Nevertheless, he decides to keep fighting, to defend his friend. With each strike, his body is aching and his mind is on the verge of collapse. No matter how hard you fight, no matter how many potions you use, you cannot win this fight. No matter what, you will get the bad ending. I think this fight does a great job of conveying what might go through someone's mind right before facing the end. As the battle rages on, the DMW will begin losing more and more of the character portraits that have been added throughout the game. The memories start to corrupt and distort, fading into fragmented images. Zack's thoughts begin to drift apart, and he found himself focusing solely on one person who had meant the most to him. They remain to the very end, when they too eventually disappear.
Don't worry. That's right. But wanna hear? Not scary at all. Stuff? Will I see you again?
I'll be here.
In the church within the slums, Aerith, now adorned in a pink dress, tends to the flowers as rain falls. She begins to pray and suddenly senses Zack's presence. Lying in a pool of blood, surrounded by defeated troops, Zack is found by a crawling Cloud. In his final moments, Zack encourages Cloud to live on, entrusting him with his honor and dreams. As Zack breathes his last breath, Cloud tearfully accepts the mantle, pledging to be Zack's living legacy. And this is where the Cloud that we play as in Final Fantasy VII is born. Cloud, holding Zack's sword, stands up. He bids Zack a final goodnight and walks away, dragging the Buster sword behind him. The sky brightens as Zack peacefully awakens in a heavenly glow. Angeal descends from the light. Fearless, Zack reaches out and Angeal takes his hand and they ascend together.
It does feel good.
Cloud travels the desolate wastes of Midgar, still carrying the Buster sword. Zack's final request echoes in his mind.
If you see Aerith, say hi for me.
A feather gracefully descends from the sky, and Zack's lingering question reverberates.
Hey, would you say I became a hero?